All right, y'all. I'm gonna start this off by saying, "Call hello, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai." That's all praises be unto Yahweh in the name of His Son Yahweh Shai. I am Officer Haya El from San Antonio, Masada. Tonight's lesson is going to be about our footprint in medieval Europe, with focus on King James and others, like other nobility, and just like really just going through the evidence of our presence. You know what I mean? It's going to be a really light lesson in terms of each area that I touch on. However, it's going to be a lot of information in general. So the real goal is to give y'all a starting point with some of this material so that you can take it and start to look elsewhere with it. Okay, like looking up terms, names, family crests, just books. Everything is going to be here. Um, I'm gonna have to drop all the links to the resources. I'll put that in the description. I'll put it together somehow, right? But y'all, again, all praises to the Most High God. Let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna start with some scripture. Do this right. So we're gonna start in Proverbs 25:2. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. I'm not gonna say that I'm disappointed in my brothers, but I am going to say that I was surprised, right, to hear mighty brothers like Deacon and Hassad say that King James is a white man. Really surprised in that, simply because that violates a couple of just core tenets that we use when we go out to the streets. And one of those core tenets is that the Most High God ain't dealing with the heathen like that, right? This is Amos 3:7. Surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets. And just to get another witness for that, we're going to go to Psalms 147 real quick. And this is Psalms 147:19. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. He hath not dealt so with any nation. And as for his judgments, they have not known them. Praise ye the Lord. Now, I understand that the KJV is a translation of the Bible. However, in order for the KJV to be properly translated to the point where it makes sense to the actual Israelites, you got to be dealing with somebody who has the spirit of knowledge on them, given to them by the Most High, right? If the Most High God ain't dealing with the heathen like that, you got to explain why the KJV is so reliable in terms of most of the scriptures that we pull. I'm not going to say all of them, right? I know there's some discrepancies and some fallacies with the KJV, but for what it is exceptional. It is exquisite. It is our primary sword, right? So to say that King James is a white man, I'm not going to lie, that's alarming, right? But we're going to keep going because I don't blame those brothers for what they recently just said. Might have got some bad information, might not have done enough, research or digging for information. That is common. I do it too. We all are guilty of it. But this is Sirach 11:7. Blame not before thou hast examined the truth. Understand first and then rebuke. Right? I don't know what books these brothers read. I don't know what sources they consorted with and consulted for their video, right? Because they didn't show everything. Anybody who teaches in Israel, you already know most of the stuff that you bring to your audience. There's a far larger foundation under it, right? So I'm not entirely sure what their sources are. So I don't blame my brothers. I don't accuse them of any type of sin. However, let's clear the air on this. King James is not a white man, right? So this is going to be 1 Thessalonians 5:21. Prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. I aim to prove what I'm saying tonight. All right. Now, I know there's not a lot of scriptures up here, so you might be thinking he probably ain't got that much proof. We're going to come back to these scriptures because we're about to grab some proof, right? And we're going to start in a book. Let me see all my stuff up here. So the first book that we're going to go to is going to be called, I got to get to the title because when y'all see this shit, y'all going to be like, I understand why you need to read it. If I can find it. It's called The Memoirs of the Secret Services of John Mackey during the reign of King William, Queen Anne, and King George I. Right? Now, I want to see, when was this book written? Right? Because I know some of y'all might be saying that this is a book that is not contemporaneous with the figures of George I and Queen Anne. So let's see, when was this written? 1733. All right. So it is a book that is quite old, and it is slightly, after the rulership of these 18th century kings, like King James and all that, King James the Sixth, who I'm talking about specifically. All right, it's going to be after him, but however, it's going to talk about people who are direct kin to him, like his grandson, and people who are also like basically distant kin, cousins, all that. Anyway, let's get to the source. All right, we're just going to pick a few people out of this book. So this individual, his whole entire goal was to spy on the royal court and to basically make basically just a profile on each person. So like when you look at the FBI today, if they were to profile a criminal or profile somebody that they're investigating, they say things like your name, your appearance, the job that you have, et cetera, et cetera. This is no different. But instead of actual pictures, what you have are just descriptions, right? You already see somebody is of brown complexion. Who is that? John, Duke of Buckinghamshire. But there's one that I want specifically, actually two of them. I think it's entry 26. Not you. So this is it's going to be character page 25. Daniel, Earl of Nottingham, Secretary of State, is eldest son to Mr. Finch, Lord Chancellor in the reign of King Charles II. King Charles is the grandson of King James, right? This gentleman never made any considerable figure till the Revolution, when he zealously opposed King William's coming to the throne, yet was made Secretary of State by that prince to oblige the church, of which he sets up for a mighty figure. We're going to go to his depiction, or description, rather. He hath also the exterior air of business in application enough to make him very capable. In his habit and manners very formal, a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or Jew, about 50 years old. Again, a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or a Jew. So you already have one individual who's described as being very black, right? And it seems that during this time, the Jews were known to be of a swarthy, dark, or Moorish complexion, right? So let's go down to this next one. I believe it's 32 or 33. And you have another person of brown complexion here. This is Lawrence, Earl of Rochester. You're going to notice just kind of a trend here, right? Most of these people are just black. Cool. I think this is him. What is it? No. Okay. One of these. So one of these talks about one of them being like the king. Here he is. Charles Lennox, Duke of Richmond, is son to King Charles II. So this is literally his son, right? So this would be the great grandson of King James VI. By the Duchess of Portsmouth, he was carried by his mother into France in the reign of King James, and left France in the reign of King William, when he declared himself for the religion and constitution of his country. He is a gentleman, good-natured to a fault, very well bred, and hath many valuable things in him, is an enemy to business, as black folks are wont to do, very credulous, well-shaped, black complexion, much like the king, King Charles, not 30 years old. Again, I'll read it. And is an enemy to business, very credulous, well-shaped, black complexion, much like King Charles, not 30 years old. So now you have a contemporary or relatively contemporary description of a direct grandson of King James VI. Now, I know some of y'all might be saying, well, they could have become black, but King James is white. We're going to show some pictures of King James's father and his grandfather. right? The thing is, I'm not, again, I have to emphasize this point. I am not making accusations that brothers have nefarious motives for saying these types of things, attributing our deeds to the enemy. However, I have to question, out of all times to stop doing your homework, why did you stop now? But anyhow, let's keep moving, right? Because this book, as you can see, to those of y'all who get it, it's a little hard to read. If you have trouble reading Old English from the KJV, you will definitely have trouble reading this. But just bear with it. And it's actually pretty interesting. You just kind of get a decent depiction of these people that were in the royal court at the time, right? This is character page 40. Charles, Duke of St. Albans, is son to King Charles II. So you have another son of King Charles. By Miss Gwyn, was made by King William one of the bedchamber and captain of the band of pensioners, and sent by the king to France to congratulate the marriage of the Duke of Burgundy. He is a gentleman. He is a gentleman every way, de bon natural. I don't know what that means, but well-bred, doth not love business. Again, you'll notice something that describes the people and how they behave. A lot of the men are given to women. You'll see that in here. A lot of them are overweight, so we love to eat. And you'll also see this very commonly. They don't like to do business. One of the things about Judah is that we are not serious about our business. And there is nothing new under the sun. You see these same depictions here. But is well affected to the constitution of his country. He is of a black complexion, not so tall as the Duke of Northumberland, yet very like King Charles, turned of 30 years old. So you have another son of King Charles II who resembles him, although he's shorter, but he looks just like him, and he's black in complexion. Again, King Charles, his nickname is Black Boy. Right? I mean, what more do you need by way of hints at somebody's, ethnicity? Because nobody else in the world is called black except for you niggas, right? You Negroes, you Zanj, right? No one else is called Negro or black, only you. But yet, for some reason, just because the white man wants to claim credit, all of a sudden he can go, well, I'm known as black too. So there's another figure, and actually I didn't even put this in my lesson, but I did want to talk about him. What's his name? So I talked about this in the chat today with the brothers, and he is Cletus the Black. They depict Cletus the Black as a white man. Of course they would, but they try to say they give him the epithet the Black to distinguish him from the white. African bust. There's a specific one that I'm looking for. Hopefully I can find it offhand. If not, we will keep going. So one of the things that sometimes confuses our people is the art styles of these different eras, right? So when you see the black and white pictures from medieval Europe, like in the 1400s, they were using a technique called etching, right? Where you would have a metal plate and you would literally etch the picture into the plate, and then you would put the paper on it, and you would basically run a hard rod over it to basically imprint it on the paper, right? And the only colors that would be available to you are gradients of black and white. So depicting somebody as black is not as simple as, say, making them colored black, because then you wouldn't be able to distinguish any features, right? So you would have to have various grades of shading. I can't find it. Damn, they're making these pictures harder to find. Black Greek. You know what? It'll come back to me. Anyway, Cletus the Black saved Alexander the Great's life, right, in the heat of battle. And he was also one of the trusted commanders and generals under Alexander the Greek's father, Philip, right? So the real brains behind Alexander the Greek's deeds was Cletus the Black, right? And so he's also related to Lanik, who was the wet nurse, right, of Alexander. He was sister. I just wanted to make sure I had that right before I said it. He's the sister of Cletus the Black, and he was the wet nurse of Alexander the Great. So I made the comment today in our chat that Cletus the Black is the original Eminem of basically the world. He is the first and greatest beneficiary of culture vulturing off of Black people, right? The military genius of the Greek army, the Roman army. It's all thanks to really the people that they conquered. And we are the people that they repeatedly conquered. Most of the time they were able to conquer us because we either were sinning and the Most High God brought us to ruin, so we ended up in their hands, or we threw off the yoke of oppression only to put it back on voluntarily by attempting to incorporate Esau into our ranks and teach him of our ways, right? If you know about the Hasmonean dynasty, after we got out of the Greek captivity, which facilitated the Roman captivity, then you know what I'm talking about. But Cletus the Black and Lanik, right? Basically the foundation of Alexander the Greek. But moving on, right? So we're going to look at some art concerning King Charles II. There's an effigy that is a wax figure in Britain or the UK, and they've had to relocate it numerous times because it keeps being defaced, right? Let's open this image somewhere else so we can zoom in. So what you'll see, because one of the things in that video that Deacon and Hassad did, which kind of disappointed me, is they would just do a cursory Google search, look at the images, and then go, case closed. Like, come on, y'all. Like, I thought iconoclasm was a thing. I thought our enemy covered the faces of the judges thereof. And if there's nothing new under the sun, why would they stop now? Anyway, when you look at this photo here of the wax effigy in this booth here, you see that this figure is not white, right? It is not the same pallor or color as this. What is this? That's not what he looks like. That's not what he's described as in a contemporary source. And we're going to get more sources. We only just grabbed that one. But what you see is when you try to look up things about King Charles, half the time you don't even get King Charles II. You get the King Charles III, right? The Edomite that's currently masquerading as a descendant of King Charles and of the Stuart dynasty, right? So let me see. Let's do that. Right, here's a defaced statue of King Charles. You see the big lips. You see that negroid nose, right? So craniology, right, is the study of basically like, you know, the skull and the cranium. The white man during the early, during the 19th century, basically, and 20th century, as it says here, right? What he was doing was he was taking the skulls of different types of people and he was measuring them. And he was basically taking all these measurements and classifying them according to different racial groups or ethnic groups. Let me make sure, am I still on? I am. Was everybody dropped? Okay, cool. But the science in and of itself, like the body of knowledge that they gathered, is relatively accurate, right? And just because they tell you that they discarded it doesn't mean the world discarded it, because the oldest skeleton that they found in the UK is called Cheddar Man, and we're gonna go over that. And then we have the Iceman that was found in Eastern Europe, right? And then I believe you have the she's called like the Ice Princess, found in Russia, and she's also a black woman, right? And when you see all these pictures, I got them all up. We're gonna go by them one by one. This shit might take 5 hours, but we're gonna do it, right? But craniology was the study of the different measurements of features on the cranium. And using those features, they were able to tell if someone was Negroid, if they were, as a matter of fact, it's right here, right? Caucasoid, Mongoloid, and Negroid, right? So we have very specific features. You notice the slight soft chin there? And you notice that wide mandible right there? That's gonna support that wide nose that we have, right? And you see the round eye sockets. That's why our eyes are almond shaped, right? That's one of the ways that they know who they're dealing with when they find bones. They look for the markings and the demarcations on the bones. And when I say demarcations, I mean the different grooves on the bones that where tendons and stuff would connect. And using those measurements, they can reconstruct a face, right? And give you a 3D rendition of what somebody might have looked like. Keep that in mind because we're going to need that for a little bit later, right? But let's keep going with these scriptures real quick. So we're proving this thing, right? And what I'm proving is what was done in the past is being done in the present. And if we were given enough time, it would be done again, right? The same way that if you take your eye off of Michael Jackson, white people are trying to claim him. They're going to do that to your entire legacy, right? Because they have an incessant thirst to take the place of Jake. But this is Ecclesiastes 1:9. The thing that hath been done, it is that which shall be done. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Not seeing the images. Boy, I tell you, man. Hold up. Okay, hold up. Let me remove this. And then it's always something, man. Did I close those screens? I hope I didn't. All right. All right. All right, let's go back down to the stuff that we just showed. So, and you can see the screens before, right? Or could you only see the books? Right. Anyway, this is the wax effigy of King Charles II, right? And when you look up King Charles II's wax effigy in Westminster, what they'll show you is they'll show you essentially a whitened image. And let me show you. Here we go. So when you look up that wax statue, they're going to show you this, right? Because you have to understand something. The people who are currently in charge, they're not trying to show you who was really in charge in those days. That's why you had iconoclasm, the Renaissance period, rebirth, right? And for those of y'all saying, oh man, this artist drew white people. I can't even spell it. Renaissance period. And then iconoclasm. Right? So, iconoclasm is the destruction of religious or political icons and images, often stemming from a belief that venerating them is a form of idolatry. Now, they're going to tell you that these images were worshipped, so they destroyed them. But the thing is, they don't tell you that Renaissance painters not only destroyed the icons, but they painted them in their own likeness to make them look like white people. But it can also refer to the rejection of cherished beliefs or institutions. Notable examples include the Byzantine iconoclasm, 8th and 9th centuries, the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, you know, when we lost control of the church and it fell into the hands of our enemies. And you had things like the Sabbath be changed. So the Protestant Reformation is something that you also need to be familiar with, right? The Protestant Reformation was a 16th century religious and political movement that challenged the authority of the Roman Catholic Church, leading to the creation of Protestantism. It began in 1517 when Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses, criticizing practices like indulgences and papacy's power. So there was corruption in the church, right? Massive corruption in the church. That's why the white man got sent to basically put us in slavery in the first place, right? Because not only were we corrupt, we were enslaving one another, we were warring with one another. Many of us had fallen under the influence of Islam, and we were actively fighting against our own brothers, right? So there was a lot of things going on, hence why the punishment of slavery was so severe when it finally came. But, and then lastly to cover, the Renaissance was a period of European culturalistic, artistic, and economic rebirth that occurred roughly between the 14th and 17th centuries. So this happened for literally 300 years, a process of rebirth. Rebirth from what? If you are already in charge, you don't need to be reborn. And the royal family today, don't they say that they are blood descendants of the royalty that ruled before the Renaissance? So how were they reborn politically if they are blood descendants? Questions you got to ask, right? So you see here that the Renaissance was a period where there was a cultural rebirth, right? A reprinting of a people, so to speak. Their footprint on the world was remade, redone. But when you look into the things that changed, you will quickly see that the people who were in charge before the Renaissance, are actually, completely after the Renaissance, because with the final expulsion of the Moors in 1619, that's when we really lost our footprint and we were scrounging for power, right? Our last vestiges of power were being taken away. And you'll see that as well in this lesson. But let's keep moving, right? So, and I might be all over the place, y'all. I'm trying to just show some of this stuff real quick, right? So we established that there's no new thing under the sun. One of the things that is not new under the sun is that we have enslaved our own people, right? And I'm going to prove that here. This is 1 Kings chapter 12 and verse 1. This is the son of Solomon. When you go to 1 Kings 11, the last verse, Solomon dies and rests with his father. And then once we come into chapter 12, you see Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, already sitting on the throne, making decisions, fucking the kingdom up, right? And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were to come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father and his heavy yoke, which he put upon us, lighter, and we will serve thee. So when Solomon found out that he basically was going to lose a significant portion of his kingdom and it was going to split, he put a hit out on Jeroboam's life, right? And Jeroboam of the tribe of Ephraim, who was to be king over the northern kingdom, he fled, right? So we're seeing Jeroboam basically make his return, because with the death of Solomon, he's coming to check in with Rehoboam and let him know, hey man, we're down with, with the program. Long as you lighten our load, like, hey man, lighten this slavery that's on us. I don't want to say this servitude, right? Because you already see here, they're willing to serve. They're just not willing to be slaves, right? Verse 5, and he said unto them, depart yet for 3 days, then come again to me. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father, while he yet lived, and said, how do ye advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him, saying, if thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them and answer them and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. So they basically told him, hey man, if you do right by these people, man, you have people who are willing to serve you forever. They're willing to spend their lives in service to you. But he forsook the counsel of the old men, which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, which stood before him. So, Rehoboam went and got his his young friends, the men that didn't have the experience nor the ability to administer wise counsel to govern a kingdom. It was just some young niggas talking in their feelings. And he said unto them, what counsel give ye, that we may answer this people, who have spoken to me, saying, make the yoke which thy father did put upon us lighter? And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thus shalt thou say unto them, my little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now, whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father hath chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So in other words, hey man, you thought my dad was bad. I'm about to fuck y'all up. So this is literally the Southern Kingdom enslaving the Northern Kingdom. So if there's nothing new under the sun, we should see that happen again. And who started the slave trade? Well, when you look at this book here that I have called The Negro Question Part 6 and the 13 Colonies, you'll see the aristocracy during the formation of the 13 colonies were our people, right? And this is one of the reasons why when I preach to Northern Kingdom, I make sure to apologize, because I know we've done wrong by our people, right? And that includes enslaving them or attempting to, and being stopped by the Most High God. But we did enslave some of our people, right? And we just got to hold that, right? But you see here in 1 Kings 12 that we did, in fact, enslave our own people, right? But that's not the crux of my lesson today, right? Because despite us enslaving our own people, I think I already, no, I didn't, right? This is Zechariah chapter 1 and verse 15. And I am very sore displeased with the heathen. Actually, do I have that? No, I don't. With the heathen that are at ease, for I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. So as bad as we have been to one another, as much evil as we have done upon the earth, to the world, to the animals, to the people, to everything, including one another, it pales in comparison to the wickedness that has been inflicted upon us by our enemies, especially from the nation of Esau or Edom. The things that they have done to us are literally unmentionable, especially on YouTube, right? I can't go into the specifics of buck breaking. I can't go into the specifics of torturous devices that they used upon us when they were hunting us during the time of the Spanish Inquisition. I know I spelled it wrong, but let's see. No. How do you spell it? Marianism. Hold on, let me go to. I know I'm on Bing right now. I should try it. Hold up. Cool. So y'all will notice that when I searched it in Bing, it gave me nonsense. But when I search it here on Google, I get some, get some pertinent information. I get a foothold, right? But anyway, hidden Jews or crypto Jews are individuals who practice Judaism secretly while outwardly professing another religion, a phenomenon often associated with the Spanish and Portuguese Jews forced to convert to Catholicism during the Inquisition, right? You got to remember, our people were basically the kings in the Iberian Peninsula, right? Iberia, literally going back to Eber, meaning Hebrew, right? So, and not to mention the Stuart kings, the crown of Spain and Portugal was united under them as well. It wasn't just Scotland, Ireland, Britain, and France, and Wales, right? It was also Spain and Portugal at times, right? But we were basically persecuting some of our own people in some cases, right? Because you have to understand, one thing that I don't disagree with Deacon on is that King James was a Christian. I don't disagree with that. And I do not disagree with the fact that whoever King James is, right, whether he is our people or an Edomite, he persecuted, right, the children of God and sent some of them into slavery. I don't oppose that at all. However, it's not as cut and dry as King James simply just was for us or against us. There were many different factions of our people, right? We were warring against one another. Some of us had forsaken being an Israelite altogether. Some of us had, latched on to Catholicism. Some of us had latched on to Islam. Some of us literally stayed in the New World. You're going to see that one of the things that in this lesson is when the prisoners that basically of the Stuart dynasty, which would be the fathers of King James and his family, when they fell out of power and they were sent to the New World, they found Irish settlers already there, right? You're going to see that in this lesson if I can get to it. But so you see, Marianism was our people being the hidden Jews, right? Because we were already basically being forced into hiding because we were being forced to convert via the Spanish Inquisition in 1478. Now, if you know about the Sansanian Wars, right? It's wars between from 602 AD to 628 AD, and that was between the Byzantine Empire and the basically Elam, right? The Persians. They were fighting us as we tried to retake the Holy Land. We were trying to basically take the Levant, and as you can see here from Wikipedia, the Sassanians, which are the Persians, gradually kicked us out of much of the Levant. However, we did defeat them, right? We held them to a certain boundary, but they claimed a significant portion of the Levant. But right after that, we had to Byzantine Caliphate Wars. We then had to fight the Muslim Caliphate. And you'll notice this is a war that took place over 400 years. Right. So a lot of this information isn't very it's not just simple to understand and learn. There's a lot of different kings, a lot of moving borders, a lot of different treaties and trysts that were established and broken and all types of things. Right. But you see here in the 1630s, the Rashidun forces of Arabia attacked and quickly overran Byzantium's southern provinces. What are the southern provinces of the Byzantine Empire? So when it says the southern provinces, it's talking about North Africa. It's talking about parts of Israel. It's important to understand these things because if you don't, whenever you read about these wars, you're not going to know who's involved. The names are changing, and that's why this isn't easy to follow. That's why, again, I don't fault my brothers sometimes for not going as deep as they need to, because this is still very, very surface, because there's a lot of material to cover, right? But you see, this is the Byzantine Empire, and you see parts of Egypt, parts of Libya. This is part of the Byzantine Empire. Parts of Morocco. You've even got, look at that. That's the Strait of Gibraltar right there. That's the Iberian Peninsula right here. This is where we were in charge. Eventually, right? Because when did the Moors take the Iberian Peninsula? Iberia. And that would be 711. All right. That's the Muslim conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. All right. So, like I said, right? A lot of moving parts. A lot of moving parts. So you see the Visigoths, I can't even say it, and the Franks. Well, you see that in the 700s, they lost control of this land because that's when the Muslims took it over. And by Muslim, it was comprised of the Arabs, the Persians, the Edomites, some Hamites, and our people, right? And most of the time when they refer to our people, they're referred to as Berbers. But some of the Berber tribes are not necessarily Negro, but most of the time are. But anyway, so let's keep going. All right. So one of the things that we have to understand is all the things that have been going on. These heathen have been putting a lot of a beating on us, right? A lot of hardship and oppression on us. Oh, I left out a group. the Ottoman Turks versus Byzantine Empire. So when you read about the Ottoman Turks, those are the Edomites, right? Man, I should have did this on Google. But the reason why I'm bringing this out is so that essentially, like, I can kind of drill home the point, right? That we were basically being thrown out of power by the entire world. The Most High God rose up enemy after enemy after enemy, the same way that the Most High God rose up Hadad the Edomite. All right, I'm gonna get that real quick. But the Ottoman Turks versus the Byzantine Empire. This is the conflict between the Ottoman Turks and the Byzantine Empire. It was a series of wars that ended with the fall of Constantinople in 1453, marking the final destruction of the Byzantine Empire and the rise of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans, a rising power, gradually conquered Byzantine territories due to the empire's declining military strength and internal weaknesses. We had been fighting for nearly we were fighting since about 600. Right? So about when was the fall of the Roman Empire? So the fall of the Western Roman Empire was in where is it again? 476. Right. So that's when you had the Holy Roman Empire begin. The separate Roman Empire is when our people took over the Roman Empire, the provinces that Rome controlled. What are the provinces of the Roman Empire? I know this is a crash course, y'all, but we try to cover a lot of stuff. I apologize once again. I just don't have time to go through everything. But you'll notice the Byzantine Empire basically looks identical to the provinces of the Western Roman Empire. It shouldn't surprise you, right? Because when the Edomites fell out of power, we're the ones who took up the mantle of rulership in their empire. So it doesn't make sense to read about how Paul's ministry went as far as Italy. Actually, I'll do Spain. How about that? That's even better, because that's farther to the west. So I'll start at 23. So this is Romans 15 and 23. But now, having no more place in these parts, and having a great desire these many years to come unto you, whensoever I take my journey into Spain, I will come to you. For I trust to see you in my journey, and to be brought on my way thitherward by you. And if I be somewhat filled with your company, but now I go unto Jerusalem to minister unto the saints. I wanted to read that extra part to show you that Paul was still only talking to saints, right? For it hath pleased them of Macedonia. Well, normally we think white people come from Macedonia, but Paul he was talking to and teaching the Jews, right? And he was teaching them in Macedonia and Achaia to make a certain contribution for the poor saints which are at Jerusalem. One of the things that we have to acknowledge is that Paul's ministry took him to the Jews all over the Roman Empire. And if there are churches set up in these provinces of the Roman Empire, that means that we are in those churches. And if we are in those churches, then obviously it's going to be the Southern Kingdom, because that's primarily who was left. The Northern Kingdom had already left. So the Southern Kingdom is comprised of those that you would call Negro. So this whole map shows you that Negroes were throughout Greece and Macedonia. They were throughout all these different lands. right? So I don't understand why when we say they were in Britannia, which is part of the Roman Empire, because wherever the Romans set their foot, that's where their soldiers were. Britannia is on basically where Britain is today. All right. Man, I need to go to Google, man. This is stupid. So where you have Britain today, you have Britannia in Roman times, right? So if it's part of the Roman Empire, that means that our people were there in those lands. So again, why is it beyond the pale to suppose that we were the kings during the Byzantine Empire? But I'm gonna keep going because there's a lot more to bring out, right? Let's go to some of this evidence here because there's a lot of stuff here, and I'm gonna go back to that. So I'm going to go to some of these books because there's a lot of books here that I want to cover. But I want to start with this little letter from Benjamin Franklin, where Benjamin Franklin in the 1700s acknowledges that the majority of Europe is in fact black or tawny. So let's go ahead and grab that. So this is from his letter, right? I'm gonna get the title of it if I can get this shit to go away. Cool. Observations concerning the increase of mankind, peopling of countries, and see, I don't even know what that means. I'm gonna have to look that up. But anyway, peopling of countries by Benjamin Franklin, and this was in 1755, right? So this is from the mind and the pen of Benjamin Franklin. Let's read a couple of paragraphs here, right? Because Benjamin Franklin, he directly states that the intent of the so-called white man was to white out Europe. And in the 1700s, it had not been done yet, right? They were in the process of whiting out Europe. But anyway, this is entry 23 on page 10 at the top, right? For this, I guess for this chapter, but it's overall page 224 from the book that this is taken from. So starting with 23, in fine, a nation well regulated is like a polypus. That's like an octopus, right? A polypus. Take away a limb, its place is soon supplied. Oh my God, that is so annoying. Hold on, y'all. I'm trying to get rid of this damn. Why is it doing that? We just gonna de-highlight that. Man, this shit's tripping, man. Slovakia, yo, I cannot unhighlight this. I'm just have to deal with it. Damn. You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna do this. Anyway, Slovakia, y'all. In fine, a nation well regulated is like a polypus. Take away a limb, its place is soon supplied. Cut it in two, and each deficient part shall speedily grow out of the part remaining. Thus, if you have room and subsistence enough, as you may be dividing, make 10 polyps out of one. You may of one make 10 nations, equally populous and powerful, or rather increase a nation tenfold in numbers and strength. So he's talking about taking one person and he's using the metaphor of using an octopus and basically cutting away one of its tendrils or tentacles, and another tentacle coming out of the octopus. And then if you cut the octopus in half, it'll basically create two octopuses or octopi, right? He's using that to juxtapose the nature of sending one of their own to populate an area, right? And since detachments of English from Britain sent to America will have their places at home so supplied and increased so largely here, why should the Palatine Boers be suffered to swarm into our settlements, and by herding together establish their languages and manners to the exclusion of ours? Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, keep that term in your mind. When you hear English, that's the so-called white folks in Europe. An Englishman. That's why you have the term Englishman and Brit. They have tried to make them mean one and the same when the Brits and the Englishmen were fighting each other. They are not the same people. The Englishmen were Oliver Cromwell and his ilk. Now, those are the people that the Ottomans would become as they encroached into Europe and pushed further west, right? And since detachments of English from Britain sent to America will have their places at home so soon, supplied and increased so largely here, why should the Palatine Boers be suffered to swarm into our settlements, and by herding together establish their languages and manners to the exclusion of ours? Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of our Anglifying them? Now, see the way that's phrased, because what does it mean to be Anglified? Right? It means to basically make them look more Anglo, the concept of being an Anglo European, right? Make them look more white. And will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion. If the Germans are already white, how in the hell would they have a different complexion? Which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionally very small. All Africa is black or tawny, Asia chiefly tawny, America exclusive of the newcomers, which would be his people, wholly so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also. I'm going to read that again. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also. The Saxons only, who with the English, there's that word again, make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. I could wish that their numbers were increased. And while we are, as I may call it, scouring our planet by clearing America of woods and so making this side of our globe reflect a brighter light to the eyes of inhabitants in Mars or Venus, why should we in the sight of superior beings darken its people? Why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America, where we have so fair an opportunity by excluding all blacks and tawnies, of increasing the lovely white and red? But perhaps I am partial to the complexion of my country, for such kind of partiality is natural to mankind. So all these different European nations that Ben Franklin mentioned, in his eyes, they're all niggas. They're all black. So again, this is something that's pretty much widely covered. As a matter of fact, I'm sure, I don't want to say I can point to the video, but I'm sure Deacon and Hassad, you've probably read this at least 10 times over the years. Far more astute and erudite than me. However, why is it all of a sudden discarded now? Don't know. But anyway, and then we have this book called The Delectable Negro. We're going to grab a few things from it, right? Again, we're going to go through all this stuff, and then we got a bunch of tabs to go through because I'm not leaving any question in your mind. When I get done with this video, whether you watch 10 minutes of it or you watch every bit of it, it might be 2 to 3 hours. I do not care. But from the time that you watch this video, you are going to know that we ruled in Europe. The Byzantine Empire, that was our time to shine. That was when the devil got shut up in his pit for 1,000 years, and we put on the garments of rulership for a very short time, right? Only 1,000 years. That's a short time considering all the millennia we've been in slavery off and on, right? But let's get these sources, right? The book here is going to be called The Negro Question, Part 6, The 13 Black Colonies by Lee Cummings, right? Researcher and author. Right. Now, he says a lot of different things about, just the history and things of that nature. But I'm going to skip it in favor of going to things that have more evidence behind them, right? Where you can basically look up books, look up quotes, things of that nature, just not his commentary. Anyway, this is from British geologist and archaeologist, an essay from our earliest ancestors, pages 96 through 97, Professor Boyd Dawkins, from 1837 to 1929. In the year 449 AD, certain Englishmen, there's that word again, came from North Germany and the southern shores of the Baltic Sea and pushed the Britons' ancient name of England, or the Britons, westward. By the year 607 AD, the English had pushed the British, or the Brits, westward as far as Chester. The English carved out Yorkshire, Chester, and southern Lancashire, forming the kingdom of Northumbria, or Northumbria. I can never say that. Northumbria. Professor Boyd Dawkins is giving the location of the whites in England. The inhabitants of Britain belonged to very different races. Britain was inhabited by the Basque from ancient times, and they called themselves Roman citizens. In their books, where are their books? They were called the Britons or Welsh. There are two types of Welsh. One is dark around and 5 feet 4 inches, and the other is tall and round-headed. The English pushed the dark Welsh and Britons westward into Wales, Cumberland, Westmoreland, Highlands of Scotland, Cornwall, and Devon. The term "moor" does not just mean "gimme more." It literally is "more," as in M-O-O-R, or I believe they also say "moro" in Italian, right? M-O-R-O, right? So, and then you have the Morenos in Spain and Portugal, the dark-skinned Moors, right? But you see in Westmoreland, right, or the Blacklands, right, you see our people being described as the dark-skinned Welsh or British people, right? And this is by Professor Boyd Dawkins, right? So we're going to go to another source here. We're going to go to page 7 through 10. He's got all types of stuff in here, man. Pictures. Granted, they're in black and white, but what we see here is we start to see the fathers, right, of King James. So this is Alexander II. You might say, hey, you know what? That's a white man. It isn't, right? You got to remember the technique that they were using to portray these individuals was called etching, right? And I'm going to grab that right now. Where is it? I have it here somewhere. Oh, yeah, we got a lot of stuff to show. Can I get that? Oh. All right, that's cool. Etching techniques, 1400s. So in the 1400s, etching techniques involved coating a metal plate with an acid-resistant ground, scratching a design through the ground to expose the metal, and then submerging the plate in acid to bite the lines. While the technique was developed around the 14th century and used primarily for decorating armor, it began to evolve for intaglio printing around this time. What is intaglio printing? Intaglio is a printing technique where the image is incised into a metal plate and ink is held in the recessed areas. This picture shows you an excellent example of intaglio. So what you see is it doesn't give room for multiple colors off the bat, right? So one of the things that you have to understand is color was not readily available during those times, not just because dyes were expensive and they were rare. To get certain dyes of certain colors, especially considering that in Europe you didn't have access to a lot of natural resources, you had to get it through two primary ways, and that was either to source it from the southern portion of the Byzantine Empire, which was in North Africa, or to bring it from the so-called Middle East and take that long journey with it all the way through the trading routes to Western Europe, or you could take the materials from America, South America, Isles of Hispaniola, et cetera, and bring the dyes to Europe, right? So there was no easy way to have colored pictures. That's why painting is such a big deal from the time of medieval Europe, right? So what you see is, you see the artistic method being used to make these pictures. So one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that when you look at these pictures, that's what they were using. And this was in 1198, right? So you would have had an etching technique. Ah, man. Printing techniques. Yeah, I'm gonna have to see what technique was in Europe. But you could see that printing techniques have existed all over the earth. Whether you are etching a basically a stencil into a press formation, or you're etching like a little stencil into a board, and then you're putting the paper on it, and then you're basically rubbing the paper and rubbing the image into the paper, right? They have what is that graphite paper that we have today? That's a printing technique that they do in offices, right? To superimpose different documents, right? If you've ever seen how actually, yeah, that shows my age. But you used to get forms like that where you would sign the top form, and then they pull the bottom form out, and you would see the graphite paper in between, and the pressure on the graphite paper went right on the paper underneath, and that would be your copy. And you would keep that, and that would be for your records while they would have the signed copy. That is a form of etching, right? But that is one of the forms of, or that's one of the principles of art that they used back in those days, right? But let's go back to these images. So this is the King of Scots, Alexander II, in 1198 AD. He's described as a Highlander, right? He is a Scottish Stuart king. This is King Matthew Stuart IV, and that's in 1516 to 1571. So that would make him a son of this person, right? So whether it's grandson, great grandson, but he is a descendant, right, of Alexander II, the King of Scots. So this is King Matthew Stuart IV, right? This is King James's grandfather. And you'll notice in his book, Lee Cummings remarks that it was very hard to find this image, right? Now, I know y'all talked about the zestiness of this dude right here, and you know what? I agree. Dude doing too much. I don't know what's going on with this frilly ass collar, and nigga look sugary. However, sugariness withstanding, this is the father of King James VI, right? The zestiness and all, that's him, right? And you'll notice you got the soft chin there. You got the lips that we're known for having, the thick lips. You got the wide nose with the flaring nostrils and the descended philtrum right there. As a matter of fact, is that the philtrum? I forget what that's called. Anatomy of nose. It's either this or that. I always forget. Let's see. What is that? I forget what that piercing is. Dang it. Yeah, the septum. That's what that is. Thank you, baby. Nose septum. So we have a descended septum, right? Where we have shortened nostrils and a descended septum. So it gives us that look of a wide flaring nostrils, right? That is a negroid trait. And you see that in these people here. They have these wide negroid noses here with the thick lips and the curly hair. Now, one of the things that is also not new under the sun is that Judah loves white women, right? And we had a penchant for white women while we were rulers in Europe. And the further east you went in our rulership, the more we were incorporating Edomite women into our sexual proclivities. And I'm talking about the aristocracy, right? Where when you look at our people who are ruling in Western Poland, right, basically on the borders of Khazaria, right, and parts of Germany, and we're going to get into that Coburg heraldry, Pappenheim, all that stuff. Man, I forget how you say Jacob. It's like Jacob or some shit like that in German. But there's a lot of art associated with those terms, and you can find the black art if you know what to search for. But moving on, right? And then we have the man himself, King James. King James looked just like Ike Turner, man. Look at that shit, man. Y'all trying to say this is a white man? All this drip on this nigga, man. Y'all talking about he a white man? Come on, y'all. Come on, man. And if he a white man, why the white man so saltless today? Please explain that shit to me. I'm so curious, y'all. I'm so curious. But anyway, we got a lot to go through. That's King James, right? Oh shit! Why is it doing that? Yeah, there we go. All right, now this is King Charles the First. All right, King Charles the First, and then King Charles II. We're gonna look more at this. Well, actually, we already looked at it, so y'all know what that is. There's another source in this book I'm gonna grab real quick, right? Because King, or what's his name? Not King. Ben Franklin made another statement, and he captures a lot of statements, right, in this book from various sources, and a lot of them are white sources, right? But this is from Professor Huxley in 1870, The Iberian Race, Iberia being Spain and Portugal, right? Author and Professor Huxley, page 332. The Iberian black Basque bones with his animals have been found all over Europe, right? So the term Iberia or Iberian is synonymous with black, right? According to Lee Cummings, right? Now, I would like to get this actual book and see more of the, the quote and what surrounds it so I can get the full context of it. However, you see here that we have another statement. This dude looking like Lucky from Lucky Charms, but he's even saying that essentially the Iberian race or the black race, right? All over the Basque. But and all over Europe, Slovakia, not just the Basque. But there's something that I want in specific or specificity. Let me get it real quick. Yeah, if you don't have these books, man, you ain't gonna know what's going on. Yeah, see? So you have, and King Midas was not necessarily a black Jew. I would have to look more into that. He says some things that you would definitely have to look, go behind him and verify. But he has some stuff in here which is pretty nifty and neat. See, when you see these pictures with all these flowing curls, one of the things that I recently did, probably those who knew me last year, you knew that I had hair. I had longer hair, much longer than now. But one of the things I recently got acquainted with was the idea and the practice of having long hair and caring for it. And as my hair got longer, the short curls, that was no longer a thing. So like the nappy hair that we think we have, it stretches out into full curls when it grows out, right? And most of the time we braid our hair, we straighten our hair, we do things to get rid of the curls. But when we were in power, we had the liberty to wear our hair long. It was a token of our aristocracy to have this well kept, curly, flowing hair. And as I go through these pictures, you're going to see not just some of the wax effigies that they have constructed of the kings and the nobility of Europe from those days. You're going to see many of them look like this. They look black. They have black features. Have the almond-shaped eyes, the slight chins, the wide mouths, the flaring nostrils, and then the long flowing locks. Right? You're going to see a lot of pictures of that. Right? You see those features? But let's keep going. All right, I'm trying to get to a certain page slot here, y'all. I know I'm taking a second. Yeah, he talks about all types of people, man. He talks about the natives. Hell, he even showed that during World War II, they had black Japanese generals. The world used to be far blacker than it is now, right? So it makes you really wonder what happened during World War I and II. But, all right, and we're going to cover a little bit of this book, Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica by Joseph J. Williams, right? And this guy was a PhD. So for you niggas talking about this is just some random person, no, this is a doctor, right? Granted, back during those days, being a doctor didn't require nearly as many study hours as it does now. That doesn't diminish the amount of work and research that they did because they were far more astute in their work back then and far less distracted. But anyway, you see the Black Irish, and we're going to go into that. But we're going to go into some of these shipping manifestos, right, that he has in this book, right? But first, I want to cover the Cromwell Edict. That person, Oliver Cromwell, that I'm always mentioning over and over again, pushing our Benjamite brothers into the Caribbean. Because you got to remember, the original inhabitants of Jamaica and the Caribbean, a lot of the Caribbean islands, I don't want to say all of them, but a lot of them, the original inhabitants were the Arawak Indians, or the Tainos, right? The Taino natives are who we call the Ephraimites today, or the Puerto Ricans, right? And that's who Columbus enslaved Prince Henry of Portugal. That's who they were enslaving and preying upon in the 1400s. So severely to the point where they killed most of them and they had to bring in new slaves. Well, those new slaves had to come from somewhere. They didn't all come from the west coast of Africa, as you're about to see, right? But this is the Cromwell Edict, right? Again, this is from the Negro Question, Part 6, right, on page 113. And this is the Cromwell Edict of 1653. Those who fail to transplant themselves to Connaught or Clare, Ireland, within 6 months shall be guilty of high treason, and you will be sent into America or some other part beyond the sea. And then Lee Cummings goes on to say, when the whites invaded Britain in 449 AD, they pushed the blacks west into Britain, Scotland, and Ireland. Cromwell did the same thing. Connaught and Clare is in Ireland, which is west. These same Black Irish were shipped into Jamaica, Barbados, West Indies, and the American colonies. If you want a clear understanding of the deportation of the Black Irish, you need to purchase the Negro Question Part 4, The Missing Link. Can't find the file, but I got the book, right? You need these books, y'all. But this book shows you the two groups going into captivity. The one group coming out of Europe and the second group coming out of the West Africa. Both groups of blacks are on the same boat. The old timers used to say that a hard head will make a soft behind. And I guess that is what happened to King Charles I. Now that we have seen this great tragedy, let us now focus our attention on King Charles II, right? Now, he goes on to talk about the political upheaval and the transition from one king to another. But I want to go down to these ledgers for the Scipio ship, right? This is page 117 of Negro Question Part 6, right? The 13 black colonies, I believe it's the full name, right? But either way, a list of the 95 prisoners that went on board the Scipio at Liverpool in order for transportation 30th of March, 1716. So let's go down, right? Yeah, because they were basically the Black Scots, right? They were made political prisoners of war because they were trying to regain rulership after the English Civil War, and there was nothing civil about it because it was the Englishmen, so-called white folks, Oliver Cromwell and them, right, going up against our people who were trying to maintain a foothold in rulership, and it was being stripped away from them. It was the last vestiges of power that were being taken away. So he lists the manifest, right? The Black Scots were described as prisoners or rebels because they were trying to re-establish Black Scottish rulership in England after the Civil War. Back to the ship's manifest, right? So he's listing people here, and you see these people all have the last name Stewart, Cumin, and then this is Ship Hockenhill, Liverpool, England to St. Christopher's, Leeward Islands, West Indies, Liverpool, June 25, 1716, right? And you see all these different details about it. But then you see the names, Andrew Ramsey, Mark Bernerman, right? You have Sutton Christie, Walter Stewart, James Curry, Lawrence Charters, James Hayes, John Ridley, James Congleton, Crestwell, Gardner, Congleton. You see all these names. These are British and Scottish and Irish sounding names, right? I want to find some of the manifests that we have here in America. They have shipping manifestos of slaves that came over here with their full names. And of the ones that I've seen in the past, I'm gonna have to pull them up, but you have slaves with French last names. You already have a name and you haven't been assigned to a master in the Americas yet. So where'd your name come from? You see? Like, so these names here are the names that our people already had. That's why the majority of the Jamaican folks, our Benjamin brothers that you meet, a lot of them are going to have Irish and Scottish sounding last names. It's not a coincidence, right? They try to tell us that we took on the names of our slave masters. And in certain cases, I'm certain that happened, right? As people lost contact with their families and their fathers, I know many of us lost our names and had to be renamed according to the slave master that had ownership over us. However, many of our people never lost their last names. And they were able to maintain a sense of identity, even through slavery, because they were maintaining a lot of information covertly, from making maps out of their hair, the way they would do braids and cornrows and the like, to different, esoteric languages that they had to create in order to communicate with one another in plain sight, right? We don't give our ancestors nearly enough credit for preserving what little history they could, right? But some of it is just blatantly written down, and you just have to search for it. But so we see the shipping manifesto. So we're going to go ahead and move on, right? Because there's still a little bit to go. And then we're going to cover a little bit from Whence the Black Irish. All right. Now, I have these books here. All right. No, I don't want to say that because I fucked it up. This is a book called The Delectable Negro. And it's a book. Actually, he says what it's about here. The Delectable Negro, Human Consumption and Homoeroticism Within U.S. Slave Culture. I was going to try to give it a synopsis, but couldn't have said it better myself, right? Vincent Woodard talks about the nature of how the Edomites were eating us during slavery, right? So when you read something like, and I'll just bring it up, we all know it, it's an oldie but a goodie. Let me make sure so I don't break up. Yeah, I'll break up my ordering here. Cool, we can close these. So when we read Hebrews 12 and 16, Why do we forget that the white man is basically a caveman, right? Lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright, right? For ye know how that afterward, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place of repentance, though he sought it carefully with tears. And then we got Job 30, right? We got two. Oh my God. So we got two witnesses here. This is Job 30:1. But now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to set with the dogs of my flock. Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished. For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in former time desolate and waste, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in the caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Among the bushes they brayed, under the nettles they were gathered together. They were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. This is talking about the Edomites. So if this is who the Edomites are, they can't produce the canon of the KJV. I don't understand how we think this about these people, and meanwhile we're trying to attribute the KJV to them. I don't understand it. I don't get the logic, right? Especially when them being the wild man follows them. Some of y'all have heard me say this before. The Woodwoes. Look at that. Right? The medieval wild man is also what he's called, the wild man. Right? But Woodwoes, Bigfoot, right? That was just Esau in the wilderness, covered in hair, running about. And look, they knew about Esau all the way back then. This is what he was on. This is a damn naked, hairy white man trying to rape a woman. Nothing new under the sun, but yet I'm supposed to believe they managed to shape up in a few hundred years in Europe and canonize the Bible in Old English. I'm trying to figure it. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't get it. But that's the type of stuff that you could read about, right? I have a book on the Woodwoes. I might put that in the chat as well. If anybody wants it, let me know. If nobody says anything about the Wild Man book, I'm not going to put it in there because, again, it's just mythos. You know, a lot of it is just, you know, some things that people have written down, and it's going to be hard to verify because it's very, it's a very scantily researched and chronicled mythos here, right? There's not a lot that I was able to find. You might be able to find more, right? But if you want the book that I have, again, just let me know. I'll put it in the chat. Right? So we see how these people are in the past, right? But there's a lot of lies going about. So how do you see through the lies? This is Obadiah 1:6. How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hid things sought up? So how are we to come to find out who Esau is? How are we supposed to find out the real identity of this devil? This is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God, Salakia, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. And now ye know that what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. So the man of sin was hidden even during the time of the apostles. Right? Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, is a letter written by Paul. Right? One of the apostles, one of those commissioned to go to spread the gospel to our people, whether they were known as Jew or Gentile, those sent by our Messiah to preach the gospel. He is one of those people. And even during his ministry, even during his circuit, right, you had the son of perdition in hiding. And that mystery was already at work. And he let us know the Most High God is the one who's sanctioning Esau to be able to hide himself. And he's going to hide himself until the Most High God no longer allows him to do so. And that's where we are. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish. So for those of y'all who fall for the hijack and fall for the lies, you ain't gonna make it. You're gonna have to be far more discerning, because if all of a sudden we saying King James is a white man, what other lie you gonna fall for? Right? Because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Now, again, I don't levy any sins or accusations at brothers for saying King James is a white man, but you need to understand what you're doing when you do that, right? You're taking away our ability to claim our history, to claim the things that we were actually responsible for, both good and bad, right? Because the truth is supposed to set you free. I don't want to believe a lie simply because it's hard to deal with. Our people have done far worse things than oppress one another, right? One of the things that we are responsible for is the death of the Messiah in the flesh, right? Now, I know our salvation had to come by way of that. However, it's still something we have to be punished for. And if you look at our punishment over the past couple of millennia, especially the last 500 years, shit, right? But over the thousands of years, this 2,000 years since Yahushua left, oddly, right? We have been through it, right? We have been through it. But these last 500 years have been quite heinous and horrendous, right? So we have literally paid in blood for what we've done. But let's not attribute the things that we did to people who have nothing to do with us and our God, right? Damn, I'm after the whole thing. It's cool. This is Ezra 4:1. Now, when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the children of the captivity builded the temple unto the Lord God of Israel, then they came to Zerubbabel and to the chief of the fathers and said unto them, let us build with you, for we seek your God as ye do. And we do sacrifice unto him since the days of Asar-Haddon, king of Assur, which brought us up hither. So you have a bunch of heathen after we were commissioned by Cyrus, king of Persia, to go build up Jerusalem again and to restore the temple, right? Or to rebuild the temple, right? You have the heathen coming, trying to lend their services and join our efforts. Let's see what our people say. But Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the rest of the chief of the fathers of Israel said unto them, ye have nothing to do with us to build a house unto our God, but we ourselves together will build unto the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, hath commanded us. Then the people of the land weakened the hands of the people of Judah and troubled them in building. Again, nothing new under the sun. We try to exclude ourselves so in the service of our God, and here come the heathen to hassle, harangue, and hinder us. Nothing has changed. As I said, our fall in the Byzantine Empire, it took a while, and we fought a lot of enemies. We fought all the heathen. We fought Ham, we fought Ishmael, we fought Persia, or we fought Elam, we fought Esau. And if you're familiar with the spread of Confucianism in China, we even had to fight Moab. We've had to fight everybody. And that's what we're doing today. The laundry list of enemies in Psalms 83 are at it again. And we are supposed to tell them that they have nothing to do to build a house unto our God. If they can't build the house of God, why can they rewrite the word? I'm still trying to figure it out. But So one of the ways that the Most High God has restored life unto his people is by giving us knowledge, right? Isaiah 25:6, and in this mountain shall Yahweh of hosts make unto all people a feast of fat things, a feast of wines on the lees, of fat things full of marrow, of wines on the lees well refined. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death in victory, and Yahweh, our power, will wipe away tears from off all faces, and the rebuke of his people shall he take away from off all the earth. For the Lord hath spoken it. And the Most High God in his judgment starts with his people. And taking away that rebuke first is going to be a effort to give us our wisdom of our heritage back. That's part of the way that our shame is being taken away. We are reassuming our identity as Israelites. And that reassumption of identity is taking place because of the knowledge that the Most High God is allowing to propagate the earth, starting with his people, right? This is Revelation 12:12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. With this truth going out, our enemies know their time is up. Right? Old BB Melikowski, all them the fake small hats over there, right? Pretending to be us. It's not just us here in America that thus are us who are proclaiming to be the Israelites. It's not just us who are revealing that they are not the real Jews, right? You've got the leaders of nations offhandedly commenting on how they are not the real Jews. I believe Nicolas Maduro spoke on it not too long ago. He made quick mention that they are not the real Israelites, right? But moving on. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times, and half a time from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. So we know that this devil aimed to consume the man child that this proverbial woman, this hypothetical woman here, right, our metaphorical, hypothetical, and proverbial woman, right, who represents the nation of Israel. The child that she brought forth is supposed to represent the Messiah. And the dragon represents Herod and the nation of Edom, who was looking to kill the Messiah while he was a baby, right? But when the serpent saw that his kingdom was at an end, when these Edomites saw that their kingdom was at an end, right? Just like the times of old, they're doing the same thing now. They're blaming the Israelites. They're persecuting the Israelites. Nero blamed the burning of Rome on the Jews, and he persecuted us for it, right? And here in Babylon, you see what Donald Trump is doing to our Northern Kingdom brothers. You see what he's doing to the Southern Kingdom day in and day out. The white man's foot has never left our neck, right? But you see that the Most High God is starting to restore our image. The flood of lies is being refuted by all of the information that's coming out, all of the icons that are coming out. When Vladimir Putin revealed all those Russian icons and showed all those black faces for the saints, for Yahushua, you know what I'm saying? The likeness of the Most High God having dark skin like a sardine stone or a jasper stone. They typically don't show God's face, but they show God's hand descending from the clouds, right? I know y'all can't see down there. I'm lifting my hand and shit, right? But you see God's hand coming down out of the clouds, and more times than not in those Russian icons, they look brown or black. When you look at the Bristol Psalter, another series of pictures, right? You see Okay, when you look at the Bristol Psalter, you see black nappy head images. Right? What is the Bristol Psalter? The Bristol Psalter is a pocket-sized 11th century Byzantine manuscript containing the Greek text of the Psalms, notable for its numerous marginal illustrations that provide visual commentary, classified as a marginal psalter. It features a mix of detailed scenes from the Old Testament, full-page miniatures, and small images, many of which have typological links to the New Testament. The manuscript currently housed in the British Library is significant for its rich and extensive illumination within a small format. So if they have this in Britain, why are they still telling you that the people in the Bible are white? Why are they trying to claim descendancy from the Israelites in the Bible? I don't know if y'all know that the royal family of England, they claim to be direct descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All those the scepters and the jewels and stuff that they wear, all the gold and that stuff has meaning, right? That stuff has meaning, and you have to look into it if you want to know what all that stuff means. And a lot of it is biblical, right? So if they're saying they are linked by blood to the Israelites, then why is it that the evidence, when you look at it unedited, or at least not as edited as sometimes it's completely whited out, right? Because you could see some of the more recent renditions of paintings where they painted over the likeness of the original image, right? Why is it that the originals always show dark people, especially when it's talking about people in rulership? More times than not, it's going to show some nappy head nigga sitting on a throne, riding a horse, doing something noble, right? Because it was our people. Right? We should be asking that question if somebody's going to tell you that a white man wrote the Bible. These are just things that you need to be able to search out, right? You have to search out a matter when you're dealing with the scriptures. You got to study to show yourself approved. And on the matter of King James being a white man, if you're saying that, you have not studied to show yourself approved at all, right? But so let's get this book, Whence the Black Irish, right? We're not going to get a lot of it. And this is going to accelerate, right? I know it seems like a lot of tabs and stuff, but we about to accelerate this a little bit, right? But this is from the book. Oh, shit, that's the wrong one. All right. Let me make sure. Page I. Anyway. So, Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica. Right, by Joseph J. Williams, okay, PhD, right? Shit, man, I don't know how to read Roman numerals like that, so we gonna go ahead and search that. Shit, I ain't that good at reading the numerals at all. Hold on, let me bring that back up. Roman numeral. MCMXX11. Okay, I'm on a Roman numeral converter. 1 second, y'all. MCMXXXII. Ooh. So this was made in 1932. Right. Right. So this is from a quote from Mary Gaunt, or basically some commentary on her writing. Mary Gaunt, writing about Jamaica in 1922 in her chapter on the white bondsman, states, "To this boiling pot Cromwell sent 1,000 Irishmen and 1,000 Irish women. I can find nothing but the bare notification that they arrived, and it hardly seems to me that those 2,000 Irish can have helped matters much when they were poor convicts or political prisoners. In 1756, Dr. Brown was okay, we don't need that. But you see here that this was during the time of Oliver Cromwell. And he is literally sending our people to the Caribbean. And you see here that this person is talking about a new shipment of like indentured servants or slaves, right? That being sent from Ireland or from Europe, because the Irish could be scattered in Europe, but being sent from Europe to the Caribbean, right? So we're going to go to page 10 through 11. We're not going to get a lot of this, just going to get a little bit. Let me see, do I need anything else? No, that's enough. So we're going to go to page 10, right? We cannot then better begin the study of our knotty problem than by taking up the evidence adduced by John P. Prendergast, whose impartiality and candor is thus established beyond question. Mr. Prendergast's work, The Cromwellian Settlement in Ireland, appeared in London in 1865, and in Appendix 11, which is entitled Of the Seizing of Widows and Orphans and the Destitute and Transporting them to Barbados and the English Plantations, we read, while the government were employed in clearing the ground for the adventurers and soldiers, the English capitalists of that day, by making the nobility and gentry yield up their ancient inheritances and withdraw to Connaught, where they could wish the whole nation, they had agents actively employed throughout Ireland, seizing women, orphans, and the destitute to be transported to Barbados and the English plantations in America. Sounds like a curse to me. We're going to get right back to this. But I want to get this real quick. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. So you've got to explain to me how these people were kidnapped as slaves, sold to, not just sold, but taken across the Atlantic, literally in slave boats, and then sold as servants or slaves. That is literally the curse that we say, differentiates us from all other nations on the planet. But yet, if King James is the one who wrote the Bible and it was white folks all throughout Europe, then you're telling me that they fit the curses. Again, that's why on this issue, typically I know I seem like I'm a square type, and you would be correct in your assessment. But I know I seem like I'm being meticulous and petty even in this issue, but it's very important that we stand our ground and hold up the truth, right? Because if we allow concessions needlessly that our forefathers were not of our blood, then where does it end? Where does it end? Because, it's important that Yahushua is of our blood, correct? We try to say that we look like the Son of God. Well, why is it like, how can the white man, I don't understand how we can say the white man they aren't the real Israelites if they are the actual aristocracy in the Byzantine Empire, right? I can't see how we can differentiate the two, because we're using the KJV more times than not to make that claim. I know there are other translations. I know there are other versions. I understand that. But the majority of our body of work has been performed with the KJV Bible, right? And that would be like finding out a judge had some reason to recuse themselves in a court case, right? Maybe they're administering a judgment, and it's found out that the person who's being sentenced is their long lost brother. So that, like, now you have to look at that judge sideways, because they might pervert judgment simply because it's their relative. Well, if the Bible is written by a so-called white man, why is it to say that all the other figures of the Bible aren't white as well? Why would the white man write about black people? It doesn't make sense, right? And if we make the mistake of giving that history to them, then we have to recuse ourselves for all of our work, because the standard by which we administered that work is no longer solid, right? It's compromised. But anyway, so we see that the people in this book here, from whence the Black Irish, right? We see that these people were kidnapped and they were shipped off as slaves. But moving on, right? It was a measure beneficial to Ireland, which was thus relieved of a population that might trouble the planters. It was a benefit to the people removed, who might thus be made English and Christians, right? And a great benefit to the West India sugar planters, who desired the men and boys for their bondmen, and the women and Irish girls in the country where they had only maroon women and negresses to solace them. The 13 Years' War from 1641 to 1654, followed by the departure of 40,000 Irish soldiers with the chief nobility and gentry, right? The chief nobility and gentry to Spain, had left behind a vast mass of widows and deserted wives with destitute families. There were plenty of other persons too, who, as their ancient properties had been confiscated and had no visible means of livelihood. Let's go back. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 31. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. And that goes into the curse of thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people. This is literally what we went through in Europe. The sons of thy land and all thy labor shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always. Again, I'm not the one making it up. I'm just reading books, right? So if you want to get in your feelings and try to, pick a side based on who you like more, because I'll be honest, I don't give a fuck if you like me or not. I don't care. However, you're supposed to search out a matter and then reprove, right? You're supposed to hear the whole matter and then rebuke. If I'm wrong, produce the sources that show that I'm wrong. It shouldn't be that damn hard, right? It shouldn't be that hard. And also, if you produce your sources, allow me a chance to refute it, because you can watch this video and you can put up your own response. I will watch your response. I'm gonna be honest. I would be impressed if somebody responds to this video, because this is gonna be long as hell. And I know most people ain't trying to sit and watch a 3-hour video just so that they can respond and bring out their own books. Most people ain't trying to do that. But anyway, so we see from what we're reading that the people of Ireland, the folks who were sent here as literal slaves, some of them, indentured slaves, right? Because you got to remember, we were whiting ourselves out in Europe as well. So many of us were passing when we came over on those boats. But many of us were still black as hell, right, on them boats, right? And we had our Irish and Scottish last names. We had our Welsh last names, our English, our French last names. My last name is French, all right? I'm not going to tell you my last name. That's a form of spelling of my name, of my last name. So you more or less know, right, that all of our names, most of us, right, who came, into the I don't want to say us who came into slavery, but our ancestors who went through the transatlantic slave trade, and they were so-called branded with a European name. Most of them came over with those names. Right? Most of them came with those names. Hence why, if you look up some of the heraldry with those names, you'll see black people, right? And we're going to get into some of that, right? But again, you see the curses before your eyes in these books. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to grab some quick heraldry. We're going to finish out these scriptures and we're going to just close it out. But anyway, let's hurry up. This is Jeremiah 49:10. But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled in his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. So the Most High God is making the wicked man bare, and he's doing that through the knowledge that he's propagating to his children. Right? Oh, man, I had a scripture cross my mind, and it's gone. Anyway, it'll come back. Right? Because one of the things that we have to acknowledge through the Most High God making Esau bare is who controls the earth right now. Right? Job 9:24. We bring it out all the time. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? What is covering the faces of the judges? It's iconoclasm. Right? What's an example in the Bible of iconoclasm? First Maccabees 3:48. And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. Right? So even during Greco-Roman times, you had the Edomites attempting to wipe out the likeness of the Israelites in their own book, by the way. Right? See, again, if there's nothing new under the sun, why can we not understand that they did that in Europe as well? Got questions, right? Now, I'm not professing to be a history major or an English major, but I am not a history major by any stretch of the imagination. But the one thing I can do is read a book, right? And that's something that we need to do far, far more of, right? So I want to go over some of the stuff that basically happened, right? That basically allowed the Edomites to seize our history in plain sight, right? And I'm going to go over it by simply just going over some of the evidence to the contrary, right? Because when you look at some of these people today, despite how they look, they go back to our people, right? So the Pucci family from Florence, right? Florence, Italy. When you look at the Pucci crest of arms, our coat of arms, right? Our Pucci crest. I mixed them up. I'm getting tired. But so when you look up the Pucci family crest, you're going to see a bunch of black faces. And this is a noble crest. See, they love to tell you that the white man put his slaves on his flags and things of that nature. But what you see is you see all types of art. All right. Let's see. Where is this? I'm trying to see if it'll tell me where it's from. But you see this here? Boom. No? Where'd it go? Oh, that's small. That's why. But you see that black face over that archway? I'm trying to see where this is. Like, what building is that on? Okay, well, cool. Here we go. Where is this? This is at the Palazzo Pucci in Florence. Now, you can actually look up member of Pucci family. Emilio Pucci. I looked him up not too long ago, right? He is a descendant of the Pucci family. This is what he looks like today. He's a Southern Italian, but he looks like what you would call a white man today, right? That's why they have the proverb about Southern Italians who came to the Americas, and they say they have nigger blood, right? There's a reason for that, and that's because they are the descendants of the black nobility that reigned in Italy, right? And it wasn't just Italy, right? Malta war flag. Yeah, that should get it. So the flag of Malta. Yeah, they removed it. Moor's Head. around. So the Moor's Head was on the flag of Malta, Corsica, and Sardinia. Those are 3 isles south of Italy. All right. Blackamoor coat of arms, Moorish coat of arms in Europe. So the Moor's Head refers to the heraldic images of the heads of Africans. See, and that's how they. Oh, there it is. Abfalterschbach. I can't remember that shit to save my life, but that is tied to a bunch of art. I'm gonna have to look that up again. Damn, I'm glad I found it. But anyway, so they'll try to call us African. But last time I checked, even if we were Africans, you aren't going to put us on your coat of arms with a damn crown on our head. Looking to the left, the position of honor. That's the Dexter side of the crest. And I forget, what is it? Dexter and what is the other side? Dexter side. And Sinister. Yeah, it's weird. So the Dexter side is the honorable side. The way that you perceive crests is the right side of the actual viewer. So my right. So if you're looking at me, that's going to be my right, your left, right? So when you look to the left side of a crest from your perspective, right, the viewer's perspective, you're looking at the side of honor, the right side to the person looking back at you, right? So the left side that you see is the side of honor. And then the right side is the side of dishonor or subservience, right? So all these figures looking to the left, that's not a coincidence, right? And then when you see the bandanas with red or blood looking to the right, that has significance as well. You have to understand, our people aimed to tell a story in a picture. Yep, this is Corsica, the kingdom of Aragorn. Remember that name, Aragon or Aragorn, from Lord of the Rings? Where'd they get it from? The Shire, right? All the hobbits. Remember what Lee Cummings said, right? The people of Britain, France, Ireland, Scotland, they were black men about 5'4", 5'7" inches in height. The way that they look at those people is they look at them as hobbits or short people. Because when it comes to the European or the Anglo-Europeans, they view them as very short and diminutive people, although we were mighty for our size. We were the armor bearers. We were the ones wearing armor. We were the knights, right? And I don't mean armor bearer by way of position. I mean armor carriers, armor wearers, right? It takes a lot of bone density and strength to wear armor, right? The average set of plate, full plate, was about 105 pounds, right? So imagine you start your day of work and you put on 105 pounds worth of weights, and that's how you walk away from or walk around from the time you go into work to the time you go home at night to take all that shit off. You wearing about 105 pounds. And our people were just doing that. And the Black Knight was the one known as the most valiant and honorable of the knights. Now they make the Black Knight the villain. But who does everybody want to be when they talk about playing, knights and medieval heroes? They want to be the Black Knight because people know what time it is in the spirit, right? But you see here, and we're gonna just go down some of these, right? Now, this is from ancientafricanhistory.com, but these pictures, you can look all this stuff up, and a lot of this stuff is in museums, right? But this is Abfalterschbach, the coat of Abfalterschbach, a small town in the southern Austrian Alps, dates to 1984 as bestowed by the Tyrol County government. So this was given by the Tyrol County government. Hold on 1 second. Can I copy that? Did it get it? It did not. Okay. Okay, what is Tyrol County? Tyrol. And I'm just thinking out loud. I have a brother named Terrell. That's weird. But anyway, Tyrol. Historically, the Tyrol is a historical region in the Alps of northern Italy and western Austria. The area was historically the core of the county of Tyrol, part of the Holy Roman Empire, Austrian Empire, and Austria-Hungary from its formation in the 12th century until 1919. Right? So that image that you saw of Apfaltersbach would be from that region, right, of Tyrol. The use of a Moor's head is attributable to Apfaltersbach Apfaltersbach's geographical position within the historic Prince Bishopric of Frenzing, which was established in 1294 AD and within the larger diocese of Frenzing, which was established in 739 AD. See Frenzing, Germany description below. More specifically, Apfaltersbach's Moor's head was borrowed from the Freising Moor portrayal in the Abbey of Innichen, Italy, which was once included in both the Freising diocese and Tyrol County. And then you have Saint Peter of Kemmersberg, right? So now you have a saint with a crown on his head. And this is in Germany, or well, let me see. Kemmersberg. I think that's in Germany, but it could be somewhere else. So how do you spell that shit? Kemmersberg. Okay. Okay, Lorch, Germany. No, it's not the castle, right? So okay, yeah, it's probably here. So it's going to be in Germany. Cool. All right. So, yeah, there we go. From the sea, Freising, Germany. So then you have Belgium. Bam, another one. Now, I know some of y'all might be saying, like, damn, man, we going all the way across Europe. Yes, we are. Because the Moor's head was flown on all these flags all over Europe. Beak. So that's a municipality of Belgium. Cool, cool. We're going to put that right there. And then Linux. Hope I spelled that right. I did not. Linux. Also, Germany, or, well, Belgium. All right. That's fine, whatever. Waregem, right? You see it? Boom, 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 bam. All right. France. You got Corsica. All right. I'm going to show y'all where Corsica and stuff is. So you got Corsica right there. See, it's the southwest off of Italy. Then you've got Sardinia right here. I'm glad we got this little map here. Malta should be around here too. Hold on 1 second. Let me see. Where's the Malta? There you are. Now notice where these places are located. You've got Libya, you've got Egypt, you've got Algeria, you've got Morocco, you've got Mauritania is right there. You got the Yeah, so Morocco, Western Sahara, this is all where our people were. Whether we were converted to Islam or not, this is where our people were located. Granted, we might not be there ostensibly, right? Today, right? Apparently or purportedly, but perhaps not actually. So ostensibly is an adverb to basically say like something that looks one way, but underneath it might be something else, right? So when I say we're not there ostensibly, you can't just visually look at a certain place and see us there. The people don't look like us anymore. So when you look at a place like Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, there's a lot of people mixed in those areas. You got a lot of Ishmael in those areas, right? You got a lot of Ham in those areas. Libya is another area. Ethiopia is another area. You got a lot of Kush in those areas, predominantly. However, we are mixed in all those areas, especially in the areas where we had a heavy footprint in history, right? All right, let's go back to what we were looking at. Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful image right there. Right? Coburg, Germany, right? The Coburgs, the Eisenberg, Freising, right? Munich, right? The Pucci family, we went over that. Sardinia, all right? Latvia, right? Some of y'all know about Latvia from the comic books. That's where Dr. Doom is from, right? Latvia. Now you see why they have Dr. Doom running around in a suit with a bunch of green on, emerald green, likened unto a barrel. You need to understand who these comic books are made by. The comic books are made by your enemy who pretend to be you, and they pimp your image back to you looking like them. They do it right in your face, but you don't know it because you don't know the history more times than not. And there's a lot of shit to know, and I'm not saying I know it all. I certainly don't. However, I do know to admit that I don't know something and search out the matter, right? Make sure you do the same, right? You've got Slovenia. Where's Slovenia on the map? Hell, I could probably just pull that one site that we just pulled, and I could call it a fucking night, man. Shit, I was planning to bring out all this stuff. I ain't got to now. I do not have to now. That is freaking awesome. Because I'm tired, man. I'm so tired. There we go. Cool. So Slovenia is in that same region near Italy and Croatia. Look, it's north of Croatia. It's south of Austria. And it's also southeast of Germany, but Austria has a basically it's between Germany and Slovenia, right? But as you can see, this whole region, and then when you see Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, all this stuff, we were in these areas, Poland as well, right? The reason why I bring that up is because when you look up Khazaria, Byzantine, and you got to remember Byzantine goes all the way around. All right, so let's see. Can we get a better map than this? Khazaria. That's the old name for everything. But there we go. Kievan Rus, Hungary, all that. So that's basically like Germany and all that other stuff. And then you have Khazaria. Now, you notice here, they put that 6-pointed star in the middle of Khazaria. Why would they do that? I don't know who made this little picture here, but the last thing the Khazarians were ethnic Jews. They were converts under King Bulan, right? That's commonly known history. They're converts. And they were poor converts at that because they did not keep the laws whatsoever. They put on the guise of being so-called Jewish because they realized it was better to ally themselves as with the Jewish religion than to pronounce themselves to be Christians and then have to fight against the Muslims or to pronounce themselves Muslims and have to fight against the Christians. So they say, well, you know what? We'll play the middle. We'll be the Jews. We'll be the Israelites. We'll pretend to be them. Right? Man, that is so much stuff to know, man. Damn. Anyway, so Spain, you have Aragon, right? And this is what I just to go back real quick. Don't want to skip too quick. I've mentioned this before, Scovia Loca, right? I know it looks like it's Skofja Loca. It's Scovia Loca, right? Make sure you look that type of stuff up because it's going to point you in the direction of the Moorish coats of arms that you see all over the place, but they tell you it's a slave on the flag or a slave on the coat of arms, on the crest, or whatever you want to call it, right? But moving on, you've got Spain here, right? You've got Switzerland, the Avenches, right? Cornwall, look at that. Flumenthal, oh, it says continue. Where are we going from here? Are we going to Arabia from here? Yeah. No, it just looks like we're going all over, man. So look at this one. This one's called the Moors are the Wild Men versus the Moors. That's what it's actually called. It's not Wild Men and Moors. Wild Men versus Moors. All right. And you'll notice once again, you see the Israelites in the castles with the crowns on, and you see Esau, the healthiest he's ever been, attacking a castle with clubs and sticks and stones covered in body hair. And don't miss the detail. You see this Edomite right here has a crown on his head. Don't miss the detail, y'all. They were making war with Jake. The Most High God raised up the most base man on the planet to continuously attack us. And I already demonstrated tonight, we literally basically were at war since we became the Holy Roman Empire. And the Most High God rose up enemy after enemy after enemy as we tried to retake the Holy Land by force. And slowly but surely, we lost all semblance of power and went into the transatlantic slave trade. And that was while they were preying on us and putting us in the sub-Saharan slave trade and in the Indian Ocean slave trade, otherwise known as the Silk Road slave trade. These are the things that you have to understand. The entire earth rose up to put us out of power. And they succeeded. All right. Let's close that. All right, yeah, we're going to close some of this. We ain't got time. All right. And the Mende people, right? That movie, Armistead, however the fuck you say it, where the slaves revolted on the ship and then they turned it around and sailed back to Africa, right? Those were slaves of the Mende people from, I believe, Mali, right? The Kingdom of Mali. And they were being taken by the Portuguese to Cuba. And yeah, that's where the whole story of them imposing a mutiny and, taking the ship and yeah, But anyway, all right. Actually, yeah, it looks like they got caught. I thought they went back to Africa. It looks like they did not. South Africans that they sailed north to the east coast of the United States. And the Africans returned to Cuba and Spain. All right. But anyway, so that's who they are, the Mende people. And I'll bring it up again. Sierra Leone and of Mali. Right. So the Mende people have a debated origin, with some sources linking them to the Mali Empire, which was centered in modern-day Mali, while others suggest they migrated from Sudan. So they try to, I mean, there's a lot of migration patterns in Africa, right? And everybody in Africa taken into the slave trade is not the same people, as we already know. But so we can get rid of that. Poochie Crest, already covered it. Oh yeah, and this one right here. So I don't know how to say it. It's like Taneter, TANETER.org, right? Great site for art, great site for proof that we ruled in Europe, because they basically put names on everything, right? So you can literally go and find all this stuff yourself. All right. You see, they talk about the Berbers, they talk about the Moors in Renaissance Europe, all types of stuff. Make sure you look this stuff up. All right. Oops. There we go. Bam. Okay. Poochie family. So one of the ways that we have been hidden is simply through the names of our people changing over time due to linguistical changes, right? A linguistical change could be a change in spoken language, right? So if they say Jacob one way in German versus Italian versus Latin versus English, you see where I'm going, right? If they say it in different ways, then that means if you're not familiar with the way it's said in another language, you lose track of where that name has come from. So in Italian, Jacopo is how you say Jacob. Jacopo, Jacopo, right? And it means he who supplants, right? But you see, it's a variant of the name Giacomo, which is equivalent to James in English. I know some of y'all are going, King James, his last name ain't Jacob. Well, nigga, his last name is Jacob. You just didn't know it because you don't understand linguistical patterns and how they've changed over time. Linguistics has determined all the contextual meanings. You just have to figure it out. You have to read about these things, right? If you don't know what these names mean, if you're not looking up name etymologies, how do you know if it's the same name or not? You don't. Again, I'm not saying I know everything, but to say we did not rule in Europe, to say that we weren't there, I just don't see it. I don't see it. And I would love for somebody to produce their cause and show me. I honestly and earnestly am asking for clarification on this matter. If King James is a white man, please prove it. Somebody, right? Somebody prove it. But you see that the name James is Jacob. So when he says he's part of the Jacobite dynasty, you see? Oh, man. But, so, and this is going into etching, right? As I was talking about earlier, right? One of those art forms that they used in medieval Europe, right? So this would be a great example, right, of somebody who was a Jake, right? George Monk, first Duke of Albemarle, right? And we read about him already, I believe, right? But you see he has all these Negroid features. You know who he looks like? Little Richard look crazy as hell, but he looked like him, though. Oh, yeah, especially as he got older. Look at that. Boom. Boom. And to the white man, I say, I hear you knocking, but you can't come in. It's our history. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is our history, man. Some of us ain't going to let you take it, man. For real. I'm not going to let the white man take our history. This is our history. You know what I'm saying? Just because we did some evil shit don't mean it's his now. Like, and this is how they try to show themselves looking. This is not how they look. Like, this is why you got to know a bunch of different things. That's why the Bible says you're not to be ignorant of any matter, great or small. Again, you ain't got to know it all, but know a little bit about a lot so people can't slip bullshit past you. You know what I'm saying? More times than not, when people lie, they lie so crudely to the point where if you know just a little bit, you can catch it. This is Sirach 5:15. Be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or a small. Right? If you have heard me say anything in this video tonight thus far where you like, damn, I don't know what that is, look it up. Look it up. Don't just go, I don't know what that is, and keep it moving. Don't do that. That's how you believe shit that's not true. That's how you believe in lies, right? That's how people can lie to you and you just go, yup, King James is a white man. Yup. Don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Everything that I've said, and plus most of y'all watching my videos, y'all think I ain't shit anyway, so you gonna double check all my shit, right? But the people that you hold in high regard and applaud every time they open their mouth and shit, look they shit up. Don't just believe them. I mean, just because a nigga has done his homework 1,000 times, the 1,001st time he might not do his homework. You need to be checking, double check, right? And I have to say it again. I'm disappointed. I'm not disappointed. I'm not disappointed, right? But I'm surprised. Again, I'm surprised. The level of proof, or the burden of proof, the onus of proving that King James is a white man was not met. And I am so surprised looking at that chat that y'all had, Deacon and Hassad. You niggas was just like, yep, it's right, man. We so stupid for believing King James is black. None of y'all cited a book. None of y'all cited a quote. Nothing. Y'all just believe shit. Why? That's what makes Israelites look bad, by the way. It's not you saying King James is black. It's when you say he's black and you can't prove it. That makes you look bad, right? But anyway, let's get through these tabs. So you'll notice with iconoclasm, you'll see a lot of this, a lot of whitening of black features. You still see the descended septum. You see the flaring nostrils. You see the almond-shaped eyes and the big lips and the slight chin. It's all there. You see it on the female side as well. It's all there. It's not hard to white these images out. They do it today. Hell, we do it to ourselves. How many of our sisters out there looking crazy as hell? They damn, the bottom of their body look like a burnt matchstick, but for some reason their head look like damn coffee with cream in it. And then they got fucking blue contacts, hazel contacts with a wig on, looking crazy. We white ourselves out today. You think the white man didn't intentionally white out his art? And you think we didn't help him? We were trying to white ourselves out. I mentioned that earlier, right? But either way, we're going to keep going. We're going to get this over with, right? But that's one thing that they couldn't replace, and that was our natural swag. That's why all they could do was try to paint themselves over our image, because they don't have the same staying power. That's why when you see this pale image, it just don't look right. It don't look right because Esau ain't got this type of sense of style, fashion, and flair. He ain't got that. And this is supposed to be a nigga on the battlefield. Look at this, is a battle encampment. Look at this. And this nigga out here shining like this. Now, granted, the person who modeled for this person, George Monk, right? He was probably in the safety of a castle, sitting there in all his righteous royal garbs, having an artist paint that, and then that same artist impose that image on another painting of a background of a battlefield that he painted. Right? You didn't just have musicians on the battlefield back then. You had artists. You had all types of artistry that surrounded painting backgrounds and scenery and all types of things. Right? But you see, right, all these different types of art. Artist depictions of this one character, and none of them are consistent, right? One moment he's fat, next moment he's not. One moment he's dark, next moment he's not. Next moment he has bushy wool-like hair, next moment he has stringy dog-like hair, depending on the artist's rendition. You have to understand that a lot of these artists were tasked with repainting these images during the Renaissance. And you saw the Renaissance lasted about 300 years. There was a lot of art to paint over. And then once you started to come to the latter end, you started to have this, I'm not going to say that, you start to have these types of depictions begin to appear, where the white man finally mastered how to impose his features artistically. He wasn't just sketching over something and then painting it white, or painting it with his color palette, He wasn't just doing that anymore. He was literally painting from scratch, painting himself in as these characters. But that came later, as the ability to replicate that level of artistry began to develop, right? That's what happens when somebody is learning a trade or a trait. right? Or an activity, right? You see progression in their ability. And that's what you see in the Renaissance. In the early depictions of him being white, they look literally like they took a stencil and traced over our features and then colored them in with their color. That's why you have all those curls with some of these figures where they try to make the voluminous curls white or brown to look like their hair, and they don't have the actual curl. It just has the volume. So it looks like literally like a mop top, like this. It looks like mop strings hanging down, but yet it has volume. That's because they were painting over our images, and they hadn't mastered the craft of making things look natural. They didn't know about that. They had to develop that, right? But anyway, we see that. Now, this is what I mentioned at the very beginning of the lesson. You have the Cheddar Man in England, right? The oldest skeleton ever found. Cheddar Man is the name given to the prehistoric human skeleton discovered in 1903 in Goes Cave. Cheddar George, Somerset, England. He lived around 10,000 years ago. We know that's not true. During the Mesolithic period, and is notable for being one of the oldest nearly complete skeletons found in Britain, with genetic analysis suggesting he had dark skin and blue eyes. Now, they have to say this, right? Because when they depicted this image as dark, initially, the white people in the UK, they went ballistic. They were like, hell no, ain't no niggas in no damn England. And the scientists had to say, hey, y'all, we don't like it as much as you do, but we did genetic analysis, and we know this guy had dark skin. Now, why they're trying to say he had blue eyes, I don't know, right? Because if you have black hair, you have black skin, there's a good chance you got black eyes too. You could have, basically light colored eyes, but that is a recessive trait. That is a very recessive trait. And I would like to know, what is the genetic marker that denotes the phenotypical expression of blue eyes that they found? You can look into that if you like, but I certainly want to look into that myself as well to see if I can find that answer, because if there is no specific genetic marker that denotes blue eyes, then why are they saying it? Right? But moving on, right? So you have the black mummy known as Otzi the Iceman, right? A naturally preserved mummy from about 5,300 years ago, which we know is also not true, discovered in the Alps. You know how I said we were ruling in those areas in the Alps, Austria, all that stuff? Well, here's some proof that we were there. Recent genetic and scientific analysis have confirmed that Otzi had dark skin and curly hair, likely making him one of the darkest skinned ancient Europeans ever recorded. I'm going to reread that shit. Right? Recent genetic and scientific analyses have confirmed that Otzi had dark skin and curly hair, likely making him one of the darkest skinned ancient Europeans ever recorded. Researchers believe his skin color is his original tone and not a result of preservation, and that he was also predisposed to baldness. So they have to always double down on saying, yeah, guys, he is dark. I know it's not a result of any type of preservation or any type of coloring from an external force that was not native to his somatic makeup, right? Somatic, relating to the body, especially as distinct from the mind, his bodily makeup, his physiology, right? So the all these geneticists and these archaeologists and all these people, they have to make sure that they reinforce the message. When they say these figures are dark and people don't want to believe it, they have to say, hey, look, man, we don't like it any more than you do, but they are dark skinned, right? So this is in the Alps, right? This is the Siberian Ice Maiden. The Siberian Ice Maiden, known locally as the Altai Princess, the Princess of Ukuk, Devaka, in Akibala, is a mummy of a woman from the 5th century BC, discovered in 1993 in a kurgan belonging to one of the Pazyryk burials from the Pazyryk culture in the Republic of Altai, Russia. It was among the most significant Russian archaeological findings of the late 20th century. In 2012, she was moved to a special mausoleum at the Republican National Museum in Gorno-Altask. Right? So recreating how she would have looked according to her skeleton, they made an effigy of her. This is what she looks like. Big full lips, descended or septum, flaring nostrils, slight chin, high cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes, black hair, black eyes, and brown skin, light skin, right? She would be what you would call a light-skinned sister, more than likely. Or she might not be an Israelite. However, she's not an Edomite. Again, you got to look into this stuff, right? Now, again, if this is something that you don't know about, you should have a tab up in your browser right now with Siberian Ice Maiden. And you should be looking into this and finding out more about it, right? This is not to say like, oh, I know more than you. This is to gird you up. If you are watching this video and you are a man, I am treating this as if you are going to go teach the Bible. This is the type of stuff that you need to understand, especially if you call yourself teaching Paul's letters. If you are teaching Paul's letters and you do not know this stuff, I don't understand how you're teaching Paul's letters when you are teaching about the people who are located in the places where Paul taught at. How are you supposed to prove that the Gentiles he taught to were Israelites if you don't know who they were back then and you don't know who they are today? I got questions, right? If you don't know about these people, right? The Afro-Abkhasians. So we're going to show you where Abkhazia is real quick. Where's a decent map of where it's at? South of Russia and adjacent to Georgia. You know, the Caucasus Mountains of Georgia, Russia. That's where Georgia is. But Abkhazia is to the east or the west of Georgia, and Georgia is to the east of Abkhazia, right? And to the south of Russia. Now, if you don't know about these people, the Afro-Abkhasians, if you don't know who these people are, if you are trying to teach to all the scattered Israelites around the earth, how are you supposed to reach these people? What if somebody comes to your camp and they're like, hey, I'm interested in the Bible, and they look like a pale-faced Russian? You don't know who they are because they might be the descendants of this guy, this mean-looking nigga here, right? He's an Afro-Abkhazian from Abkhazia. And it's not just him. Look at this. You see how the little black fuzzy hats that they wore? Once upon a time, that was their hair. And you see some of them, you know, they look paler than others. Some of these you could tell that, you know, it's not their real hair. Some of them you see that it is obviously their hair, right? Look at that nigga hair right there. Man, got some beautiful hair, man. Nigga, this is literally Vanilla Ice with a high top fade. Look at that shit, man. See? That's a mulatto tribesman. I don't know if his mother is the one who's an Israelite or his father is, but he's got some of our features. Again, if you don't know some of this stuff, man, I'm not gonna say no. I'm not gonna say none of that. It's cool. But this is the type of stuff that you need to understand because we're coming into the very last days. The other day, and Brother Aman will back me up on this, we had an Asian woman, or not Asian, a Russian woman walking her dog. And she had on skin tight, like, shorts. Like, you know, the shorts that women be wearing when they go to the gym. And I ain't gonna lie, she was pretty thick. But the thing is, though, and she was built just like a black woman. Right? But the thing is, though, she might go back to these people. You don't know. You can only water down our features so much. Some is going to show up. Right? So you got the Afro-Abkhasians. You've ket people, right, of Siberia. The Ket people. That looks just like our native brothers. Right? So when you have the Ket people or the Samoyed people of Siberia, you see, You got to know who these people are. Because Russia is only about what? How far away is Russia from Alaska? It's only about 55 miles. I could become an amateur sailor in a canoe, and I could go from Alaska to Russia or to Siberia, right? I believe Siberia is on the eastern portion of Russia. Hold on, let me see. But either way, right? I could sail from Alaska to Russia. Yeah, Siberia is right there, and then Alaska is right there. I could, boom, right there. Sail between the two. And not to mention, in case you don't know, Alaska used to be owned by Russia. They sold that to the United States. Yes, Russia sold Alaska to the United States in 1867 for $7.2 million. The sale, known as the Alaska Purchase, was motivated by Russia's financial difficulties, its focus on expansion in Asia, and its concerns about losing the territory to other powers like Britain. The transaction was initially met with skepticism in the U.S., but later proved to be a valuable acquisition after gold was discovered. So, Russia had control over Alaska. But who ruled in Russia during 1867? That's something you're going to have to do some research on, you, the viewer, because I'm tired and I have some more tabs to go through and I'm not looking up any more stuff, right? So we're going to try to get through this. But these are the Samoyed people, right? And you see some of them look like Dennis the Menace, freckle-faced. Look at that, chestnut, brunette hair, chestnut brown eyes. You could see the descended septum. You could see the flaring nostrils. You could see the high cheeks, and you could see the slight chin. You still got some of your nigga features. You can't get rid of all of them. Can't get rid of all of them. You can only dilute the blood so much until you just kind of hit a point where it don't dilute anymore. All right? See? And then you wonder why you got all them tough-ass Russian boxers that be beating the shit out of niggas. And then when you look at them, they be looking just like this. See, Jake don't know his relatives all around the earth, especially Judah. And you get overconfident thinking that they ain't so-called black like you. But you find out and they knock your ass out, right? Or you get submitted or beaten in something because you underestimated somebody because you didn't know they were of your blood, right? This is a map of Eurasia, right? So we've gone from Portugal and Spain all the way to Siberia. We've gone coast to coast. You know what I'm saying? We literally went from the west all the way to the east. I would say that's what just happened to those of y'all saying that we weren't in Europe. We just dropped an elbow on you ignorant niggas, man. People's elbow style, sliding up in the dress shoes. You know what I'm saying? Read books, y'all. This shit ain't hard, man. It really ain't. You can look up on Wikipedia, the Irish people in Jamaica. It's known history that Irish people were taken to the Jamaican Isle, right? Again, the original inhabitants of the Isles of Hispaniola were the Taino Indians. If they're not there anymore, that means whoever else is there is a settler, a visitor, right? Whether they were brought there voluntarily or involuntarily, they are a visitor. They are a colonizer, right? So our Jamaican brothers, although they didn't, maliciously colonize, they did that because they were victims being sold into slavery. But they were the descendants of the nobility that was falling out of power in Europe who was victimizing their brethren. There's nothing new under the sun, right? So let's try to get this wrapped up. Obviously, the Arawak people, right? The Arawak people, also known as the Taino, were the original inhabitants of Jamaica, arriving from South America around 600 through 950 AD. They named the isle Zaimaka, meaning land of wood and water. They were farmers who cultivated crops like cassava and tobacco, fished, and lived in villages until their population was decimated by disease and violence following the arrival of the Spanish. They were decimated by slavery, right? Let's be real with it. Some Arawak people survived by fleeing to the mountains, and whilst most were wiped out, some of their lineage remains today in Jamaica and the wider Caribbean, right? Arawak peoples again. The Lacono of South America. Where are y'all at? And they live along the coast of Guyana. Small numbers in Venezuela, Trinidad, Suriname, and French Guiana. They speak the Arawak language and the eponymous language of the Arawakan language family. What does eponymous mean? Let's see. Giving their name to something named after a particular person. So the Arawak language, literally, the name of the language is also the name of the people, right? As well as various Creole languages and English. So they speak multiple languages as a group. But that's just to say, right? So you have to do the detective work and realize that if the Taino people were displaced from those islands, the people who are there, even the slaves, are not the natives. So you got to know where each group of people came from, right? That stuff is important, right? And then that's just to look up that person that we mentioned, John Patrick Prendergast. I cannot say his name. Prendergast, right? John Patrick Prendergast, all right? And then we have the King of Spain and King Philip IV of Spain, all right? So just this is just some stuff I was looking up. But here's a more accurate depiction of Philip IV of Spain, right? And see, you know that the portrayal of the white one isn't accurate because look how stupid these features look. See, this is when they were finally starting to figure out, wait a second, we can't just stencil our face over these paintings. We got to find a way to paint ourselves in. But they were still learning. They didn't know to get rid of the lips. They didn't know to change the shape of the eyes. See, now this dude, he looks like his face is melting because they're trying to make the eyes droop. So they literally just turned the eyes and made them droop. But they're still almond shaped. That is not how these Edomites look. Right? And then you, of course, I mean, shit, how many times can I bring attention to these big old soup cooler lips? Right? But yet they didn't know to get rid of that descended septum. They didn't know that. They didn't know to get rid of the flaring nostrils. They didn't know that. That's not their nose. Right? You see how they were still trying to figure it out. Almond-shaped eyes, descended septum, flaring nostrils, slight chin, thicker lips, curly hair. You see how they just simply tried to color the hair, the color of an Edomite's hair, and then they whited out the face skin, right? You cannot make it up. And they were so sloppy, they even colored the collar here, part of the paint that went on the face. So you can tell this paint was administered on here later. I wonder, where did this painting come from? Who made this? Oh, yeah, the Medici family. There's literal evidence that goes back to so-called black folks, right? That's from Italy, right? I've done some research on them. But you see here, Austria, you see the same thing. Almond-shaped eyes, descended septum, flaring nostrils, big old lips. But they tried to give him an Edomite toaster oven head. It don't fit. The features don't fit. You see? Look at that. When have you seen a cracker look like this? They literally gave a white man our hair. And that's supposed to be Leopold I, Holy Roman Emperor? again, if you understand the hijack, right? The attempt to steal our likeness and our culture, if you understand the hijack and you know what to look for, you can spot a false image a mile away. But wisdom and knowledge will be the stability of our times. To the brothers who don't have that knowledge, this shit is going to fool you and have you telling your people that this was a white man. Look at that. Like, white people don't look like this, man. Who is this? Leopold. So is this Leopold? Yeah, I don't think they labeled this one too well. The birth of Leopold. You know, it's okay. Cool. So this would be Leopold the First. All right. Damn, it may look through. And this is EuropeanRoyalHistory.wordpress.com if you just want to see some of these images. All right. Yeah, they love this nigga right here, man. And see, and it shouldn't surprise you, because if you're familiar with the things that they were doing in Europe to look more like us, it would astound you. Like the women, they were using something called a bum roll, right? My wife taught me about that. A bum roll is a historical accessory, a padded crescent or half circle pad worn around the hips to support skirts and create a fashionable silhouette, often making the waist appear smaller. That's not what it was for. It was to make their hips and butt look more like our women's. The white woman has always been jealous of the curvaceousness of our sisters, and she has endeavored to make herself look the part, although she's not. Right? We're going to move off of this. And you see that Habsburg jaw, right? That's one of the ways that you know it's us. The Habsburg jaw, that protruding jaw, right? Looks stupid on them, but when it's on us, that jaw. Let me see more. Let's see if I can find it. I mean, look, they just made him look so light-skinned to the point where he could pass, but you could still tell it's supposed to be a black man, right? But there's one where it definitively looks like a so-called black man. It's not that. I'm just fascinated with that one. I've never seen that one before. But either way, where is it? Him. You. And that's Charles V. Let me see. See, they're going to tell you that these are white folks if you don't do your homework. And you going to believe them. I'm telling you. Habsburg jaw right there. Seeing somebody literally said that's the fake afterward, but that's you with your native features, right? And you could tell somebody trying to wipe them hands out, because look at that newer paint that don't even look like it go with the rest of the paint. Looks like it was applied after the fact, right? But that's the type of stuff you're gonna have to look for, man. You're gonna have to do your homework, because your adversary, the devil, is lurking about, seeing who he can fool, who he can destroy. And if you ain't reading and you ain't verifying this stuff, you're gonna get destroyed. You're gonna be destroyed in the mind. Right? This is another site that you probably want to check out. It's called truearticlesonline.com. True articles or /true articles /Philip IV of or OF Spain. Excuse me. All right. Of course, you have Leopold the First. right? I want to know where this painting is from. I'm gonna have to get the name of that painting. But that's another True Articles Online piece. King Louis the 14th. All right. There we go. What else we got? All right. Here's the Poochie crest, like I was saying. All right. Boom, boom. Well, we know that goes back to Italy. Some newer portrayals there. All right. At the Pucci di Palazzo, right? However you say it. Now, Ammon, every so often, right? Because if you watch, what is that? Ain't that new Castlevania, or is that from what's that shit called? Joestar. I forget what that shit's called, but either way, every so often they give you a character and they name them a figure from history and they color them authentically black. And more times than not, most people see it and they think it's just them taking a artistic liberty when they're depicting the character as they were. Right? Of course, they took some liberties because the nigga didn't have his hair like that and shit. And he ain't had no purple eyes either. However, were the Pucci family of black people? Yes, most definitely. Right? So you have to look into this stuff, man. And like I said, Moro, M-O-R-O, is the nickname for individuals with dark features, deriving from the Italian word meaning more. Now they try to say that you have dark features if you have olive skin, like you have a little browning to your skin, you got black hair and brown eyes. They try to say that you are dark, right? That's not what more meant in the 1500s. More meant that you were literally dark or black, swarthy, or tawny, right? Again, you have to look at the meaning in the context of the period that it's from. Don't allow them to re-explain it in today's term because they're always going to white it out. That's the objective. That's what iconoclasm was about. But anyway, this is the Medici coat of arms. Remember how I said that name? Medici goes back to Italy, right? You do your searches with it, and you can find it. And you could click visit so you could check out where these paintings are from. Oh, look at that. Moorish UK family crest, coat of arms of the Earl of Drogheda, Ireland. And then Jacob Capitaine. See? Race mixing in the British Isles. That looks like that's what that book is from. Or that's what the picture is from, that book, right? But you see, the more I click, you've got all types of things all over the earth. All types of coats of arms from all over Europe. You know what I'm saying? Going off here, but, it is what it is. Right? And then there's that Apfaltersbach again, right? Again, this stuff is everywhere. And then this is medieval POC, our medieval people of color, medievalpoc.tumblr.com. You've got a lot of brothers and sisters who are going out of their way to put these pictures up, right? This is the portrait of a mulatto aristocrat in armor. That's what they say. But back in those days, for one, just anybody couldn't wear scarlet and just anybody couldn't don armor. You had to be of noble blood to do these things. And to be depicted as a so-called black man doing those things would be sacrilege if you were only a slave. Right? But again, this is medievalpoc.tumblr.com. And y'all, that brings me to the end. All praises. I'm tired as hell. So, actually, no, it doesn't. Oh my God, no. All right, I have a whole new window with tabs. We're going to just slide through it real quick, right? So you got the Pappenheim, German coats of arms, right? Pappenheim, Pappenheim. Look it up, right? You can that doesn't won't give you too much, but you can search things like Moorish German icons. You know what I'm saying? And you get these Coburg statues and figures. They're still in Germany today. You see what I'm saying? That's why if you're teaching at camp, most of the time you don't see European white people argue with you. You see crackers from America argue with you who know nothing about their history. They believe in the whitewashed version of history, and they're holding that up, and they're proud of it. But the ones who come directly from Europe, they go, hell yeah, I know you were in Europe. Yeah, I know your face is on the castle. Yes, I know we're squatting in your land of basically your land of providence. What does providence mean? Because it was God-given, right? Providence, the protective care of God or of nature as a spiritual power. God or nature as providing protective or spiritual care, timely preparation for future eventualities. Providence, or what is the meaning of the word providence? Other forms, providences. Providence is the guardianship and care provided by a deity or a god. Right? So by divine right and providence, you were granted authority in these lands that these Edomites took from you, only because you disavowed keeping God's laws. So God handed your authority and your sovereignty over to another nation. Right? And now you don't even get to make decisions for yourself. That's a right granted to you when you are sovereign. When you lose your sovereignty, you become a vassal, right? A vassal state or a vassal party where you are subservient to those who are in power, right? That only happens simply because we will not keep God's laws the same way we will not keep them today, which is why we are in the same position that we have been in for the last 500 years, right? But look at this, right? This is actually, we're going to go to the site. Somebody put it up on Instagram, right? So this is like a little stone or the remnant of a pillar, right? A little monument here, right? I'm not sure how big the structure was that this originally was attached to, but Johannes Maurus, or John the Moor, that's another way of saying Moor. See, like this is why you gotta go and read this stuff. Hold on, I'm gonna show y'all something real quick. Doesn't show you too much, but you got to find one simply by that word Morris 1500s art, and you got one here. You see what I'm saying? And this is in Florence, in Italy. Oh, you got another one. See, that's why you got to look these words up. You got to remember, iconoclasm is a modern phenomenon just as much as it's one of antiquity, right? Since they started the rebirth, it has been a continuous process to continue to wipe you out, to whitewash every step you take so you can't look back and see where you came from. They don't even want to risk you knowing that you're more than just what they call you as a slave or call you as a nigger. They don't want you suspecting that you are more than that. You have to do the homework. Your enemy is not going to do it for you. So those y'all who are leaning on ChatGPT to do all the work for you, I would advise you stop doing that. Right? Nothing wrong with reading a synopsis or two. If you're pressed for time or you just want a concise, overview of what you're trying to look into. However, if you're trying to prove a matter, you need to search it out, right? But you see all these pictures here, and I clicked on one, and the way that these images are associated with one another, you got a bunch of them. South German painter, St. Maurice, in the Theban Legion. Wait a minute. They always say St. Maurice was by himself. Who are all these niggas with St. Maurice? Looks like every single German person that's out there is black. Why is that? Look at that. Like I said, the average set of armor weighed about 105 pounds. See, again, we look at these paintings and we downplay the strength of our ancestors. All right. And that was all from that one turn. See, gotta look into this stuff, right? But Johannes Morris, or John the Moor, was Chamberlain to Hohenstaufen, Emperor Frederick II, reigned 1220 through 50 in Lucera, Troia? Anyway, Puglia, Italy. Johannes and others may have inspired depictions of Black and Muslim men on a capital, also likely from the region. So what they like to try to do is they like to try to paint you as a visitor. They don't want to paint you as the people who just belong there. I have a question. Why would a white man want to walk outside every day and on his most precious and most meticulously built monuments see a nigger face on it? When the white man don't even want you in his restaurant. He don't even want your kids going to school in the same school. Hell, he don't even like you smiling on social media. You ever put up a post just simply being happy on social media to get one of these damn white devils in your comments trying to bring down the mood? Meanwhile, you mean to tell me white people were putting your face, your black face with your features on their most prized possessions? Makes no sense, right? Again, Cletus the Black. This is from livius.org, livius.org, /article/person/Cletus-the-black. Read about it, right? Some sources say it was his sister, Lanik. Some people say Lanik was his daughter, right? However, right? Actually, hold on. Who belonged to the mother? Okay, cool. So it's still his brother because that would be the daughter of Dropidas, which is Cletus's father, right? But as you can see here, if you read down here, you see Alexander killed Cletus the Black in a drunken rage. So, for all his cooning, he died a shameful death. He didn't even get to die on the battlefield. His own commander killed him. Anyhow, the Bristol Psalter, we went over that. Pappenheim, we went over that. And this is Gottfried von Pappenheim. It's an example of this individual. See, when you look at these people, you're going to see the whitewashed versions, but they can't get too far away from the original. You see the afro, but they just colored it light brown. They took the skin and they just colored him white. And then they have the same shaped eyes, but they just colored him blue. Still got the big lips, slight chin, flaring nostrils, descended septum, almond-shaped eyes, voluminous hair. You can't get away from the original. You can only do so much before you just have to throw caution to the wind and try to just paint a whole new person. See, and again, you have to understand the limitations of art during those times, right? Because people would say, this looks like a white man. But if you look at the features, he obviously isn't. Right, Scovia Local Coat of Arms. Definitely look into it. And you'll even see, every so often, you'll see a whitewashed version of it. But it didn't really take too well, considering that in a lot of these areas in Europe, they left up the original crest and depictions of our people on the flags and coats of arms in various sculptures throughout Europe. So in some areas, lying about it ain't really going to work. In others, like the UK and all that, lying about it will get them far because most people aren't aware of the monuments and the pieces of art and history that are still left. And most people never set foot in a museum, despite living in the region. While I lived in England, I got a chance to go to the London Museum. Don't remember too much about it. It's been over, like 25 years, closer to 30 now. Actually, yeah, it's probably been about 30 years. But anyway, Yeah, most people when they go to museums, you know, they're not aware that these are the things that they should be looking for, because a lot of times they're things that are out of the way, or things that are downplayed, right? You'll see something like this in a museum, and then there will be somebody to tell you that, oh, those are just African slaves. Don't think too much about it. Keep moving, right? But your face, Jake, is everywhere. It's everywhere, all throughout Europe. The only people who don't know that they ruled in Europe are the people who actually ruled there. Everybody else is pretty much aware that black people were everywhere and ruled, right? I'm trying to find the term for basically more and in Germany, or in German. Damn, I'm tired. But that brings us to the end, guys. For those of y'all who have watched this whole video, I appreciate it. To my brother Amon, who is out there on the road, man. You know, peace and safety be to you, man. Love you, brother. Appreciate you listening. And to you soldiers in Masada, definitely look into these books, man. If y'all need anything, just get at me. You know, I'll make sure y'all get laced up with this knowledge. Just let me know what you need. All right. But y'all, we gonna go ahead and sign off. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. Shalom, call hello, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, Shalom. And yeah, man, love y'all. Man, you know, strive for the truth after unto death, and the Most High God shall fight for you. Right. But for those of y'all who are striving for the truth until you get uncomfortable and then you go to sleep, hey man, God ain't gonna do shit for you. Right. But anyway, y'all, shalom.